They say you never truly know your family until money's involved. I learned that lesson standing in a hallway trembling, listening to my parents and sister laugh about how dumb I was, how easy it was to take my money year after year while keeping me out of every family photo, every moment that mattered. My name is Claire Bennett. I'm 38 years old. I built a successful consulting business from nothing. I live in a $2 million villa on the California coast, a symbol of everything I'd achieved alone. Or so I thought. 1 week before Christmas, I overheard a conversation that shattered everything. My father, my mother, my sister Evelyn, all of them plotting in the kitchen. $15,000 for their Christmas party. My $15,000. And I wasn't even invited. "She's too dumb to notice," my father said. "She thinks she's part of this family." My sister laughed. Cute. In that moment, I made a choice. I wouldn't confront them. I wouldn't cry. I wouldn't beg to be seen. I would disappear. Christmas night, their party collapsed into chaos. No food, no celebration. 50 humiliated guests walking out into the cold. Meanwhile, 40 miles away, I hosted the party of the year. Real friends, real family, real joy. By 7:20 p.m., my phone had blown up. 110 missed calls, desperate voicemails, frantic texts. But here's what they didn't know: I'd been documenting their abuse for 2 years. I had evidence of financial fraud. I had witnesses. I had a plan. And by the time this story ends, I won't just expose what they did to me. I'll reveal a family secret, so devastating, it will rewrite everything you thought you knew about betrayal. This is my story. And trust me, you haven't heard anything yet. My name is Claire Bennett. I'm 38 years old, and I run a successful business consulting firm that I built from the ground up. For the past decade, I've lived in what I believed was the ultimate symbol of my independence, a $2 million beachfront villa in Malibu that I thought I'd earned through nothing but hard work and determination. Every morning, I start my day the same way. I pour myself a cup of coffee, always black, no sugar, and step out onto the balcony that overlooks the Pacific Ocean. The sound of waves crashing against the shore below has become my meditation, my reminder that I made it. That I escaped the shadows of my childhood and built something real, something mine. The sunrise paints the water in shades of gold and pink, and for those few quiet moments, I feel like I've finally proven I'm enough. The villa itself is everything I dreamed of when I was younger. Floor-to-ceiling windows that flood every room with natural light. Hardwood floors that I picked out myself. A kitchen with marble countertops where I actually cook, unlike the ornate, unused kitchen at my parents' estate that exists purely for show. This place was supposed to be my sanctuary, my proof that I didn't need them, that I'd succeeded despite being invisible my entire life. My family lives 40 minutes north in a sprawling estate in the hills. My father, Richard Bennett, is 69 now, a silver-haired man who made his fortune in commercial real estate and never let anyone forget it. My mother, Diane, is 66, perfectly coiffed and permanently concerned with what the neighbors think. And then there's my sister, Evelyn. She's 39, just 1 year older than me, and she's always been the sun around which our family orbits. Here's something I noticed early, but never questioned until recently. Evelyn looks exactly like our father. She has his blonde hair, his piercing blue eyes, his sharp cheekbones. When they stand together at family events, people always comment on the resemblance. "She's your twin," they tell Richard, and he beams with pride. I, on the other hand, have dark brown hair and brown eyes. I don't look like Richard. I don't look like Diane either, really, with her lighter features. For 38 years, I just assumed I took after some distant relative, some recessive genes that skipped a generation. It never occurred to me to question it. The Bennett family is known for their parties. Every year they host elaborate events, Easter brunches with 100 guests, summer garden parties with live music, and of course the crown jewel, their annual Christmas celebration. Diane spends months planning each event, hiring the best caterers, the most expensive decorators, making sure every detail screams wealth and taste. And at every single one of these parties, Evelyn is front and center. She's the one who greets the important guests at the door. She's the one who gives the toast before dinner, thanking everyone for coming to our family home. She's the one who poses for photos with my parents, the three of them looking like something out of a magazine spread, the perfect American family. I'm always there too, of course. In the kitchen, usually making sure the caterers have everything they need. Or in the background of photos half cropped out before the images get posted to social media. I've learned to position myself near the edges of rooms at these events where I can slip away unnoticed if I need to. No one ever seems to miss me when I do. When I was 8 years old, I wrote a letter to my grandmother, Rose Martinez, my mother's mother, who lived in Arizona. I remember sitting at my little desk in my bedroom, carefully forming each letter with my pencil. "Dear Grandma," I wrote. "They forgot my birthday again. But Evelyn got a brand new car for hers. She just turned 12. Am I doing something wrong? Why don't they see me? Love, Claire." I never sent that letter. I found it years later tucked inside an old diary, and I'd forgotten I'd even written it. But seeing those words in my child's handwriting, "Am I doing something wrong?" broke something inside me. That little girl had already internalized that her invisibility was her fault, that if she could just figure out what she was doing wrong, maybe her parents would finally notice her. The pattern didn't stop as I grew up. It just became more sophisticated, more expensive. When I was 16 and earned a full scholarship to UC Berkeley, my parents said, "That's nice, dear," and then spent the next 3 months planning Evelyn's elaborate Sweet 16 party that cost $15,000. When I bought my first condo at 25 with my own savings, they congratulated me briefly before asking if I could loan them $10,000. I never saw that money again. This past Thanksgiving was a perfect example of how things work in my family. I showed up at their estate early in the morning with a car full of groceries. I spent 6 hours in that kitchen preparing a turkey, making stuffing from scratch, baking 3 different pies. My mother wandered in occasionally to comment that the gravy looked too thick or the rolls needed more time in the oven, but she never picked up a knife or stirred a pot. When dinner was ready and the 12 guests had arrived, everyone gathered in the dining room that Diane had decorated with her signature autumn elegance: burgundy linens, gold chargers, a centerpiece of roses and eucalyptus that probably cost $300. Before we sat down to eat, Diane announced it was time for the family photo. "Just immediate family for this one," she said, gesturing for Richard and Evelyn to join her by the fireplace. I was standing 3 feet away, still wearing the apron I'd cooked in all day. "I am immediate family," I said quietly. Evelyn rolled her eyes. "You know what Mom means, Claire. Don't make this difficult." So I stepped aside and watched as the photographer snapped picture after picture of the 3 of them, my father's arm around my mother's shoulders. Evelyn standing between them, all of them smiling like they'd just won the lottery. Later that night, I saw the photo posted on my mother's Facebook page. The caption read, "Grateful for my beautiful family this Thanksgiving." I'd spent $8,000 on that meal. I'd worked for 6 hours to prepare it, and I wasn't in a single photo. That night, after I'd driven home to my villa and poured myself a glass of wine on the balcony, I opened my laptop and created a new folder. I titled it Project Christmas, Evidence Log. I didn't know yet what I was going to do with it, but somewhere deep inside, I knew I was done being invisible. Because here's what my family didn't know, what they'd never bothered to notice in their decades of overlooking me. I'm good with numbers. I'm good with records. I'm good at seeing patterns that other people miss. It's what makes me successful in business. And I just started applying those same skills to my family. But behind the garlands and glowing lights, cracks were already showing, and I'd been documenting them for 2 years. December 18th arrived cold and gray, one of those winter days where the marine layer never quite burns off, and the ocean looks more steel than blue. I'd wrapped a cashmere scarf and a bottle of expensive wine for my parents, an early Christmas gift I planned to drop off on my way to a client meeting in Santa Monica. I told myself it was thoughtful getting it to them early so they wouldn't have to worry about it on Christmas Day. Looking back, I can see I was still trying to earn something that was never going to be given. The Bennett estate looked particularly impressive that afternoon. Diane had already hired decorators to drape the entrance in fresh garland and white lights. A massive wreath hung on the front door, the kind that probably cost $400 and would be thrown away on December 26th. I let myself in with the key they'd given me years ago, the one I was expected to use when they needed something, but never when I simply wanted to visit. "Hello!" I called out, my voice echoing in the marble foyer. No response. I could hear voices coming from somewhere deeper in the house, the kitchen probably. I set the wrapped gift on the console table and headed down the hall toward the bathroom, planning to freshen up before finding them to say a quick hello. That's when I heard my name. I froze in the hallway, one hand reaching for the bathroom door handle. The kitchen was just around the corner, and the voices carried clearly through the open doorway. My father's voice, my mother's, and Evelyn's, all talking in that casual conspiratorial tone people use when they think they're alone. "So she's paying for everything again this year?" That was Evelyn, and I could hear the smirk in her voice. "Of course." My mother sounded almost bored, as if this were the most obvious thing in the world. "I told her the caterer needs $15,000 up front. She'll transfer it by tomorrow, I'm sure." My hand was trembling against the bathroom door. I should have walked away. I should have announced myself, confronted them right there. Instead, I stood frozen, barely breathing as my father's laugh cut through the air. "She's too dumb to notice," Richard said, and the casual cruelty in his tone made my stomach drop. "We've done this before. She never questions it. She thinks she's part of this family." Evelyn again, and now she was laughing too. "Cute." The three of them laughed together, a sound that felt like glass breaking inside my chest. I pressed my back against the wall, my heart pounding so hard I was sure they'd hear it. The conversation continued, something about the guest list, about which clients my father wanted to impress, about the champagne tower Diane had seen on Pinterest, but I couldn't process the words anymore. All I could hear was the echo of my father's voice. "She's too dumb to notice." Suddenly, memories I'd buried came flooding back with violent clarity. Easter brunch last year, 2023. I'd written a check for $4,000 to cover the catering, the flowers, the rented tables for the garden party. There were 40 guests, and I'd stood near the bar watching my mother give a speech thanking everyone for coming. "We're so blessed to be able to share this beautiful day with all of you," Diane had said, her hand pressed to her heart in that practiced gesture of humble gratitude. She'd thanked the caterer by name. She'd thanked the florist. She'd thanked the weather for cooperating. She never mentioned me once. My father's 60th birthday party. I'd booked the entire back room at Spago, one of the most expensive restaurants in Beverly Hills. $12,000 for the venue, the wine, the custom menu. Evelyn had stood up during dinner, raised her glass, and delivered a heartfelt toast about what an amazing father Richard was, how he'd always supported her dreams, how this party was her gift to him. Everyone had applauded. Several people had told her afterward how generous she was. I'd been sitting at the end of the table, and when I'd caught Evelyn's eye, she'd given me a small, knowing smile. Diane's anniversary party 2 years ago. I'd covered the $6,000 bar tab top shelf liquor for 50 guests who drank like they were at an open bar because they were. At one point in the evening, I'd been standing near the dessert table when a business associate of my father's approached. "You must be so proud," he'd said to Richard, who was standing 3 feet away from me. "Your daughter has done so well for herself." Richard had beamed, put his arm around the man's shoulders, and steered him toward where Evelyn was holding court by the fireplace. "Let me introduce you," he'd said. "Evelyn runs her own PR firm now." I'd stood there holding a plate of cake I didn't want invisible even in my own family's home. Each memory hit like a physical blow. How many times had this happened? How many parties had I funded while being erased from the narrative? How many times had they laughed about it afterward, congratulating themselves on how easily they could manipulate me? I don't remember walking back down the hallway. I don't remember leaving the house or getting into my car. The next thing I knew, I was sitting in my driveway in Malibu, my hands still gripping the steering wheel even though I'd turned off the engine. The dashboard clock said I'd been sitting there for 20 minutes. When I finally went inside, I moved like I was walking through water. Everything felt distant and muffled, like I was watching myself from outside my own body. I poured myself a glass of water I didn't drink. I stood at the window overlooking the ocean and saw nothing. Eventually, I sat down at my desk and opened my laptop. My fingers found the folder almost automatically: Family Records. I'd created it 2 years ago after that Thanksgiving where I'd been cropped out of the photo. At first, it had just been a way to track what I was spending on family events, a spreadsheet to help me budget better. But it had become something else. A catalog of every dollar I'd given them, every event I'd funded, every time I'd been overlooked or excluded or erased. The spreadsheet now had 12 rows spanning 8 years. Next to each event was a dollar amount and a brief note, "Not mentioned in thank you speech." Evelyn took credit. Not included in family photo. The total at the bottom read $147,000. $147,000 I'd given to people who thought I was too dumb to notice they were using me. I sat there in the gathering darkness, not bothering to turn on any lights, staring at that number. The house was silent except for the distant sound of waves. My phone buzzed once, probably my client wondering where I was for our meeting, but I didn't reach for it. This wasn't the first time. The kitchen conversation I'd just overheard wasn't an aberration or a one-time cruelty. It was standard operating procedure. They'd been doing this to me for years, maybe my entire life, and they were planning to do it again at Christmas. The question that kept circling in my mind, the one I couldn't shake, was this: if they'd stolen from me before, what else had they taken? I spent that entire night at my desk, going through everything. Bank statements I'd downloaded and saved over the years. Credit card records. Old emails where my mother had casually mentioned needing a little help with an upcoming event. Text messages where my father had sent me vendor invoices with the assumption I'd simply pay them. I pulled it all together into a single comprehensive spreadsheet, the kind I'd create for a corporate client conducting a forensic audit. The numbers told a story I'd been too close to see. 12 major family events over the past 8 years. Easter brunches, birthday celebrations, anniversary parties, holiday dinners. The amounts varied: $4,000 here, $12,000 there, $6,000 for an open bar. But they all had one thing in common. I'd paid for everything, and I'd been thanked for nothing. $147,000. That's what my place in the Bennett family had cost me over less than a decade. And that was just what I could document with receipts and bank transfers. It didn't include the smaller amounts, the cash I'd handed over, the times I'd loaned money that was never repaid, the gifts I'd bought that were probably regifted or forgotten in a closet somewhere. I opened my email archive and searched for my name in messages from my parents. The results made my chest tight. Vendor invoices, requests for money, reminders about upcoming events I was expected to fund. But when I searched for mentions of me in the photos they'd sent to relatives or posted on social media, I found almost nothing. There were plenty of family photos in my mother's sent folder, holiday cards, vacation snapshots, celebration pictures. I appeared in exactly 3 of them over 8 years, and in 2 of those I was partially cut off at the edge of the frame. I'd never been consulted about any family business decisions, despite being the most financially successful person in the family. When my father's commercial real estate ventures hit rough patches, he didn't ask for my professional advice. He just asked for money. When my mother wanted to redecorate the house, she didn't invite me to go furniture shopping with her like she did with Evelyn. She just sent me the bill for her decorator. The fury that had been building since I'd overheard that kitchen conversation wasn't explosive or hot. It was cold and precise, the kind of anger that sharpens your focus instead of clouding it. Every new discovery I made felt like another piece of evidence in a case I was building, though I didn't know yet what I was building it for. I kept coming back to that Thanksgiving photo, the one from 2023, that had started all of this documentation. I'd spent the entire day in their kitchen that year, arriving at 7 a.m. with a trunk full of groceries I'd paid for. I'd brined the turkey the night before at my own house, transported it carefully in a cooler. I'd made my grandmother's stuffing recipe from scratch, hand-rolling each piece of bread into crumbs, because Diane insisted boxed stuffing was tacky. I'd baked 3 pies, pumpkin, apple, and pecan because my father liked having options. When the guests started arriving around 4, I was still in the kitchen, my hair pulled back in a messy bun, my apron splattered with gravy. Diane swept through in her cream-colored cashmere dress, looking like she'd stepped out of a catalog, and announced it was time for the family photo. I remember pulling off my apron, smoothing down my hair, ready to join them. That's when she'd said it so casually, like it was the most reasonable thing in the world. Just immediate family for this one. The words I'd spoken in response, "I am immediate family," had come out smaller than I'd intended, almost like a question. Evelyn's eye roll had been subtle but unmistakable. "You know what Mom means?" She'd set her tone, suggesting I was being deliberately difficult, purposely misunderstanding something obvious. I'd stepped aside and watched the 3 of them pose. My mother's hand on my father's arm, Evelyn standing between them, her blonde hair catching the light from the fireplace, looking every inch like she belonged. The photographer had taken at least 20 shots, and they'd all smiled like they were genuinely happy, like this was exactly what family was supposed to look like. The photo Diane posted later had a caption that still burned when I thought about it: "Blessed with my girls." Plural. As if I'd been there. As if I'd been seen. But those patterns, I realized as I sat at my desk in the early hours of the morning, went back much further than 8 years of documented expenses. They went back to the very beginning, to a childhood spent wondering what I was doing wrong. I was 10 years old when I won the regional spelling bee. 3rd place out of 200 kids, and I'd studied for months. The ceremony was on a Saturday afternoon at 2 o'clock. Evelyn had a soccer game at the same time, 30 miles in the opposite direction. Her team was in last place in their league. She spent most games sitting on the bench. My parents didn't hesitate. They went to her game. I accepted my ribbon from the principal while sitting in a room full of other kids' parents, and when I got home that evening, my mother asked how it went while she was unloading groceries. "That's nice, dear," she'd said when I showed her the ribbon, and then she'd spent the next 20 minutes telling me about a goal Evelyn had almost scored. When I was 16, I opened an envelope from UC Berkeley and saw the words "full scholarship." I'd worked for 4 years to earn that, maintaining a 4.0 average, while Evelyn struggled to keep her grades high enough to stay on the cheerleading squad. I brought the letter to my parents, my hands shaking with excitement. My father glanced at it and nodded. "That's nice," he'd said. "Smart financial move." 3 days later, they threw Evelyn a Sweet 16 party that cost $15,000. There was a DJ, a chocolate fountain, and a professional photographer. My 16th birthday had been dinner at a chain restaurant with just the 4 of us, and Evelyn had complained the entire time that she was missing a party. At 25, I'd bought my first condo with money I'd saved from my consulting business. I was so proud of that purchase proof that I was building a life for myself. The day after I closed escrow, my father called. He needed to borrow $10,000 just temporarily, just until a deal closed. I transferred the money that afternoon. I never saw it again, and when I finally worked up the courage to ask about it 2 years later, he looked at me like I was being petty. "That was a family loan," he'd said, as if that explained everything. 3 years after that, I sold that condo to pay off another family loan Richard had convinced me to co-sign for. He'd needed my good credit, he'd said. It was just a formality. Of course he'd make all the payments. When the payments stopped coming and the creditor started calling me, I sold the home I'd been so proud of to clear the debt and protect my credit score. Nobody in my family ever acknowledged what that cost me. Sitting there at my desk as the sun began to rise over the ocean, I finally saw the pattern for what it was. For 30 years, I'd been the family ATM. The one they called when they needed money, but never when they needed family. The one who was expected to give everything and ask for nothing in return. The one who could be erased from photos and forgotten in speeches because my only value was financial. I looked at the spreadsheet on my screen, at all those numbers that represented years of hoping that if I just gave enough, sacrificed enough, proved my worth enough, they would finally see me. This year, I wouldn't just pay the bill. I'd write the ending. The text from my mother arrived at 8:30 the next morning while I was still in my bathrobe nursing my second cup of coffee. My phone buzzed on the kitchen counter and I saw her name flash across the screen. "Honey, did you transfer the $15K for the caterer? They need it by Wednesday." I stared at that message for a full minute. My thumb hovered over the screen and I watched it tremble slightly. Something had shifted inside me during that long night of spreadsheets and memories. The hurt was still there, sharp and present, but it had crystallized into something harder, something useful. I took a deep breath, steadied my hand, and typed back, "Of course, Mom. Anything for family," followed by a heart emoji. It felt strange performing affection I didn't feel, but I needed them to believe nothing had changed. Let them think I'm still their puppet, I thought. Let them feel safe. The response came back almost immediately. "You're such a good daughter. The party is going to be beautiful." I set the phone down and opened my laptop. I created a new document and titled it Project Christmas, Evidence Log, then encrypted it with a password. The first entry was a screenshot of my mother's text message and my response. I noted the date, the time, and the amount requested. Then I opened a second document and started a timeline. December 18th, overheard kitchen conversation. December 19th, payment request received. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a forwarded email from my mother. The subject line read, "Bennett Christmas Celebration, Final Invoice." I opened it and felt my jaw tighten. The catering company had sent a detailed breakdown to Diane, who'd simply forwarded it to me without comment, as if I were her accountant rather than her daughter. 50 VIP guests. A menu priced at $280 per person. Appetizers, 3 courses, dessert, wine pairings. The subtotal was $14,000. With service fees, tax, and gratuity, the total came to $15,750. At the bottom of the invoice under payment instructions, someone had typed, "Payment to be made by Claire Bennett." Not the Bennett family. Not Richard and Diane Bennett. My name specifically, as if I were the host rather than the invisible guest. I saved the email to my evidence folder, then did something I'd never done before. I picked up my phone and called the catering company directly. "Golden Coast Catering, this is Jennifer speaking." "Hi, Jennifer, this is Claire Bennett. I'm calling about the Bennett Christmas party order." "Oh yes, Ms. Bennett. We have you down as the billing contact. Are you calling to arrange payment?" "Actually, I just wanted to verify a few details about the order. This is for 50 guests, correct?" "That's right, 50 confirmed guests for December 25th, 6 o'clock service time. And the venue is the Bennett residence in the Palisades." "Yes, ma'am. We have the address on file from previous events." "Previous events? Of course they did." "Perfect. And just to confirm, the invoice should be sent to my email. We already sent it to Mrs. Diane Bennett, who forwarded us your contact information. She mentioned you'd be handling payment." "Right. Thank you so much for confirming." I hung up and added notes to my evidence file. They'd planned everything without consulting me, assigned the bill to me without asking, and expected me to simply pay it like I always did. The presumption was breathtaking. I opened my banking app and looked at my accounts. I had more than enough to cover $15,000. I could transfer it right now like I'd told my mother I would, like I'd done a dozen times before. Instead, I closed the app and opened my text messages. I sent my mother a follow-up text. "All taken care of, can't wait for Christmas." Then I did absolutely nothing. No bank transfer, no payment, nothing. My next call was to Maya Torres, my best friend of 15 years. We'd met in a professional networking group when we were both building our businesses, and she was one of the few people who'd seen through my family's polished exterior to the dysfunction underneath. She answered on the second ring. "Claire, I was just thinking about you. How are you?" "Maya, remember when you told me I should stand up to my family, that I deserved better?" There was a pause. "Yes, multiple times over multiple years. Why?" "I'm ready." "Ready for what?" "To stand up to them. I overheard something. Something that made me realize they've been using me for years and they're planning to do it again at Christmas." Maya's voice sharpened with concern. "What did you hear?" I told her about the kitchen conversation, about the casual cruelty in their voices, about the $15,000 they expected me to pay for a party I wasn't really invited to. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to throw my own party. Same night, Christmas night, with people who actually want me there." "You're serious?" "I've never been more serious about anything in my life." I could hear Maya moving around, probably settling into a chair. "Okay, I'm in. What do you need?" "Help making a guest list. I want to invite people who've shown me genuine kindness, people who see me as more than a checkbook." We spent the next hour on the phone while I made a list. Maya, obviously. Mrs. Chen, my elderly neighbor who always smiled and waved when she saw me, who I'd helped with her groceries more times than I could count. James Rivera, a young entrepreneur I'd mentored 3 years ago, who still sent me thank you cards. Carlos, a teacher at the local elementary school whose classroom supply fund I contributed to every year. Sophie, the goddaughter of my late business mentor who called me Aunt Claire, and actually meant it. By the time I hung up, I had 40 names. 40 people who'd never asked me for money but had given me something more valuable. They'd made me feel seen. I looked at the 2 documents open on my laptop. Project Christmas, evidence log, on one side filled with screenshots and notes about my family's exploitation. My guest list on the other side filled with names of people who represented everything my family wasn't. They thought I was their puppet dancing on strings they controlled with casual cruelty and calculated neglect. But they were wrong about something fundamental. I wasn't tangled in their strings anymore. Soon they'd see the strings were mine. Over the next 5 days, I watched 2 completely different Christmas celebrations take shape, running on parallel tracks that would never meet. My mother's Instagram feed became a real-time documentary of her preparations, and I found myself checking it, obsessively screenshotting everything for my evidence file. On December 20th, Diane posted a photo of herself with an event planner I recognized from society pages, both of them standing in front of fabric swatches and flower samples. The caption read, "Working with the amazing Christina Vale to make this year's celebration absolutely perfect." The comments were exactly what she wanted. "You have such exquisite taste. Can't wait. Already jealous I'm not invited." What none of those commenters knew was that Christina Vale's deposit had been paid with money Diane thought was coming from my account. Evelyn's posts were even more pointed. On the 21st, she shared a photo of gold-rimmed chargers and crystal champagne flutes arranged on their dining room table. "The event of the season," she'd written, followed by a sparkling emoji and the hashtag hostess with the mostess. The next day, it was a shot of an elaborate champagne tower being assembled in their foyer, backlit for maximum dramatic effect. Each post collected hundreds of likes from people who had no idea that the hostess hadn't spent a dime of her own money. I learned from my mother's posts that Richard had invited his most important business partners, the ones he was always trying to impress. There was the developer who owned half the waterfront property in Marina del Rey, the city council member who controlled zoning decisions, the venture capitalist who funded tech startups and summered in the Hamptons. These weren't people coming to celebrate Christmas. They were coming to be seen, to network, to maintain their position in a social hierarchy where the Bennetts had somehow convinced everyone they belonged at the top. While my family prepared their performance, I was planning something entirely different. I'd found a boutique catering company that specialized in intimate gatherings, the kind of food that felt like a gift rather than a show. I paid the $8,500 up front from my business account, no questions asked, no forwarded invoices. When the owner asked what kind of atmosphere I wanted to create, I told her, "I want people to feel like they're coming home." The jazz quartet cost $1,500, and they were worth every penny. I'd heard them play at a charity event the year before, their music warm and sophisticated without being pretentious. I booked them for 4 hours and told them to play whatever felt right. No set list, no performance anxiety, just music that would fill my villa with something genuine. The photographer and videographer were a husband-wife team I'd found through a recommendation. When I explained what I wanted, the wife nodded immediately. "You want the real moments," she said. The candid reactions, the genuine emotions. Exactly. I wanted documentation, yes, but I also wanted to remember what it felt like to be surrounded by people who chose to be there. My invitation was simple. I designed it myself on my laptop, none of the formal calligraphy and heavy cardstock my mother favored. Just clean text on a digital invitation. You're invited to a Christmas celebration at my home, December 25th, 7 p.m. Dress code, come as you are, RSVP required. I sent it to 40 people, each one carefully chosen. The responses started coming in within hours, and each one made my throat tight. Maya wrote back immediately, I wouldn't miss this for the world. You're my sister in every way that matters. Mrs. Chen, who I'd helped carry groceries up to her apartment at least once a week for the past 3 years, responded with a voice message because she wasn't comfortable with email. Oh, Claire, sweetheart. Thank you for thinking of an old lady. I'll bring my famous almond cookies. James Rivera, who I'd mentored through starting his own consulting firm, and who now had 15 employees, sent a message at midnight. You believed in me when no one else did. Of course I'll be there. Carlos, the elementary school teacher, replied, My classroom and I are only possible because of your generosity. It would be an honor. Sophie, who was 23 now and working as a graphic designer, sent a video message of herself crying happy tears. Aunt Claire, you've been more family to me than most of my actual relatives. Thank you. Within 24 hours, all 40 people had responded yes. Not a single person had asked about valet parking or gift expectations or whether it was black tie. Not one of them had treated the invitation like a networking opportunity or a social obligation. They'd responded with gratitude, with affection, with the kind of genuine warmth I'd spent my whole life hoping to receive from the people who shared my DNA. I kept watching my mother's Instagram, though, because I needed to see the contrast. On December 23rd, she posted a boomerang of champagne being poured with the caption, Final preparations underway. The comments on that post told me everything I needed to know about her guest list. Will there be valet? Someone asked. What's the expected gift price range? Another wanted to know. Black tie or cocktail attire? The questions weren't about celebrating Christmas or spending time with the Bennett family. They were about protocol appearances, doing everything correctly according to some unspoken rulebook that governed their world. I screenshot all of it. Every post, every comment, every reveal about what my family valued and who they wanted to impress. The evidence folder on my laptop was growing daily, a comprehensive record of 2 parties being planned for the same night by the same family, though only one of us knew both existed. 2 parties. 2 guest lists. 1 night of truth. On December 20th, 5 days before Christmas, my mother's text arrived while I was reviewing contracts for a client. The message made me set down my pen and read it 3 times to make sure I wasn't misunderstanding. Honey, about Christmas dinner. We're having it at 6 p.m. You can come, but try not to draw attention. Evelyn has some important guests. I sat there staring at those words. You can come. Not, we'd love to have you, or please join us, or even dinner starts at 6. You can come. As if my presence at a family Christmas dinner was a privilege being granted rather than an expectation. And then the second part, the part that made my hands shake as I screenshot the message, try not to draw attention. I was being told not to embarrass them at a party I was funding. I was being permitted to attend as long as I made myself invisible, which was exactly what I'd been doing my entire life, except now they were saying it explicitly. They weren't even pretending anymore. I saved the screenshot to my evidence folder and titled it, Explicit Exclusion, Deck 20. Then I typed back a response that felt like swallowing glass. Of course, Mom, whatever works best for Evelyn's event. Her reply came quickly. You're so understanding. This is why you're my favorite daughter. I almost laughed. I was her only biological daughter, and she'd just told me to stay out of the way at Christmas. Later that afternoon, an email notification popped up on my phone. The sender was Evelyn. The subject line read, Bennett Christmas Celebration, Final Guest List. And I was CC'd along with my parents and the catering company. I opened it expecting to see my name somewhere in the 50 confirmed attendees. I scrolled through the entire list twice. Every business partner, every society friend, every person my parents wanted to impress was listed with their dietary restrictions and seating preferences noted. My name appeared exactly nowhere. My fingers moved before I could think better of it. I hit reply all and typed, "I don't see my name on the guest list." The response from Evelyn came within minutes. "Oh, we assumed you'd be busy. You're always so independent." Independent. The word my family used when they meant inconvenient, unwanted, unnecessary. I'd heard it my whole life, always delivered with that same tone, that same implication that my self-sufficiency was somehow a personality flaw rather than a survival skill I'd developed because they'd given me no choice. I saved the entire email thread, including the guest list, with my obvious absence and Evelyn's response. This wasn't subtext anymore. This was documentation. They'd put it in writing that I wasn't welcome at the party they expected me to pay for. That evening my phone rang. My father's name appeared on the screen and I almost didn't answer. But I needed to hear what he'd say, needed to document how far they'd push. "Claire, hi. Quick question about the wine." "No hello, no, how are you just straight to asking for more money?" "What about the wine?" "Well, we were looking at the standard wine package, but some of our guests are real connoisseurs. I was thinking we should upgrade to the premium tier. It's only about 3,000 more." Only 3,000. As if that were pocket change, as if he weren't asking me to increase my payment for a party I apparently wasn't actually invited to. "Dad, will I be sitting at the main table?" There was a pause. "What?" "For dinner. Evelyn's arranging seating, you said. Where am I sitting?" "Well, you know how Evelyn is. She's very particular about the flow of conversation at different tables. I'm sure she has you placed somewhere appropriate." "So, where am I sitting?" Another pause longer this time. "We'll figure it out, Claire. Don't worry about those details. Just send the money for the wine upgrade." "Okay. The caterer needs final numbers by tomorrow." I looked at the time on my phone and made a note in my evidence file. December 20th, 7:43 p.m. Richard Bennett requests additional $3,000 for wine upgrade despite caller's name not appearing on guest list. "I'll think about it," I said, which was the closest I'd come to saying no to him in my entire adult life. "Think about it, Claire. We need to know by tomorrow." "Then I guess you should have asked me earlier. I need to go, Dad. I have a call with a client." I hung up before he could respond. My hands were shaking again, but this time it felt different. Not fear or hurt, but something else. Power, maybe. Or just the simple act of setting a boundary, even a small one, even knowing I was about to set a much bigger one in 5 days. I called Maya immediately. "They texted me that I can come to Christmas dinner, but I should try not to draw attention," I said without preamble. Then they sent a guest list with 50 names on it, and mine wasn't one of them. Then my father called asking for $3,000 more for wine. Maya was quiet for a long moment. "Say that again. They told you not to draw attention at a party you're paying for, then sent out a guest list without your name." "Yes. And they're still asking you for more money. $3,000 for premium wine. For guests who don't know, I exist." "Claire, I'm going to say something and I need you to really hear me. This is financial abuse combined with psychological abuse. You know that, right? This isn't just them being thoughtless or self-centered. This is systematic exploitation with a side of emotional cruelty." I did know that. I'd known it on some level for years, maybe my whole life. But hearing Maya say it out loud in those clear terms made something solidify inside me. "I know," I said quietly. "I'm documenting everything. Every text, every email, every phone call. They're excluding me in writing, Maya. They're giving me evidence." "Good. What are you going to do with it?" I looked at my laptop screen at the folder that now contained dozens of screenshots and saved emails and notes from phone calls. All of it time-stamped, all of it indisputable, all of it proof of exactly what my family thought of me and how they'd treated me for decades. I'm going to make sure everyone sees what they really are. They'd excluded me in writing carefully and explicitly, probably never imagining I was saving every word. And I filed it as Exhibit A. The next afternoon, I decided to make one more trip to my parents' house. I told myself I was dropping off another gift, something small and forgettable, but the truth was, I needed to see them one more time before Christmas. I needed to observe them when they thought I wasn't paying attention to gather whatever final pieces of evidence I could before everything came apart. I let myself in quietly, as I always did. The house smelled like pine and cinnamon. Those expensive candles my mother burned to create the illusion of homey warmth in a place that had never felt warm to me. I could hear voices coming from deeper in the house, and I moved carefully, my footsteps silent on the marble floors. Evelyn's voice drifted out from my father's study, the door slightly ajar. She was on the phone, and I recognized the tone immediately. It was the voice she used with her close friends, unguarded and casual, all the polish and performance stripped away. "She's such a walking wallet," Evelyn said, and I knew instantly she was talking about me. I froze in the hallway, my hand halfway to the study door. Honestly, if she stopped paying for everything, they'd drop her in a second. Mom and Dad, I mean. She'd be gone. There was a pause while her friend responded, and then Evelyn laughed. "I know it sounds harsh, but it's true. She has all this money but no life. It's kind of sad, really. Remember Dad's 60th birthday? She showed up in this dress trying to look elegant or whatever, and Mom pulled her aside and made her change into something more appropriate. Like read the room, you know." My hand was trembling against the doorframe. I remembered that night, remembered the dress I'd chosen so carefully, a deep blue that I'd thought was sophisticated. My mother had taken one look at me and said, "That's a bit much, don't you think?" She'd sent me upstairs to change into something simpler, something that wouldn't draw attention. I'd obeyed like I always did, and spent the party I'd paid $12,000 for wearing an outfit my mother had approved. I pulled my hand back from the door and stepped away before Evelyn could see me. My composure held barely, but inside I was cataloging every word she'd said. Walking wallet. They'd drop her. No life. Sad, really. Each phrase was another piece of evidence, another data point in the pattern I was documenting. I moved away from the study, intending to leave before anyone knew I'd been there. But as I passed my father's home office, I heard his voice. The door was cracked open, and he was on the phone, his tone businesslike and confident. "Yes, the loan is secure," he was saying. "It's under my daughter's name, so the bank considers it completely safe. Excellent credit history. No risk of default." I stopped breathing. There was a pause and then a voice on the other end of the line, too, muffled for me to make out the words, but clearly asking a question. Which daughter, Claire Bennett? She doesn't even know about it. My vision narrowed to a pinpoint. The hallway seemed to tilt around me. Another pause, another muffled question from whoever was on the other end of the call. Why would I tell her? It's handled. The payments are current, everything's fine. She has no reason to check her credit report. My father laughed, actually laughed. Besides, even if she did, what's she going to do? She's family. Family doesn't sue family. I backed away from the door slowly, carefully, my heart hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. My name. On a loan. That I didn't know about. That I'd never authorized. That my father had just casually admitted to using without my knowledge or consent. I made it to the front door, managed to get myself outside and into my car before the hyperventilating started. I sat in the driver's seat with my hands gripping the steering wheel, trying to breathe, trying to think, trying to understand what I'd just heard. They'd been using my name, my credit, my financial identity. For what? How much? How long? When I could finally move my hands enough to pull my phone from my purse, I called my accountant. Robert Chen had handled my business finances for 5 years, and he was the most thorough person I knew. His phone rang 3 times before he picked up. "Claire, hi. What can I do for you?" "Robert, I need you to run a complete credit check on my name. Everything. Every loan, every credit card, every mortgage, anything that has my name or social security number attached to it. Okay, that's not a problem. Is this for a business loan application? No. I need to know if there's anything in my name that I didn't authorize. Can you get this expedited? I need preliminary results as soon as possible. There was a pause. Claire, is everything okay? I looked at my parents' house through the windshield at the perfect facade with its holiday decorations and expensive landscaping and the secrets it contained. I honestly don't know, but I need this information. Can you have something by end of day tomorrow? Tomorrow is the 21st. That's cutting it close with the holidays, but I can make some calls. I'll put a rush on it and see what I can pull by tomorrow evening. If there's anything concerning, you'll know right away. Thank you. Bill me whatever it costs for the rush. Of course. Claire, if something's wrong, if someone's using your identity, you should know that's a serious crime. Identity theft fraud. I know what it is, I said quietly. I just need to know if it's happening. I hung up and sat in my car for another 10 minutes, watching the house where I'd grown up. The house where my father was probably still on the phone talking about loans in my name, where my sister was probably still telling her friends I was nothing but a source of money. All this time, I'd thought the worst thing they'd done was exclude me, ignore me, use me as a convenient ATM while erasing me from the family narrative. But this was different. This wasn't just emotional cruelty or financial exploitation. This was fraud. This was criminal. My name was on what loan? While I waited for Robert to call back with the credit report, I found myself obsessively checking my mother's Instagram account. She'd been posting regular updates about the party preparations, and now the RSVPs were starting to roll in. She'd created a highlight reel specifically for responses documenting each acceptance like they were trophies being awarded. The first screenshot she posted showed a text exchange with someone named Gerald Hutchins. I recognized the name. He was a real estate developer who'd made millions buying up affordable housing complexes, converting them to luxury condos and displacing hundreds of families in the process. His reply read, "Diane will be there. Question though, is there valet parking? Also, what's the appropriate gift value range? Want to make sure we're in line with expectations." The next post was from a couple who lived 3 estates down from my parents' people I'd seen at a dozen Bennett parties, but who'd never once made eye contact with me. Can't wait, will the mayor be there? I need to get a photo with him for our holiday card. Also, is this the party with the ice sculpture? Greg loves a good ice sculpture. I kept scrolling through my mother's curated collection of responses. Richard's golf buddies, the ones I'd overheard at his birthday party making cruel jokes about the catering staff's accents. Diane's book club friends, women who spent more time gossiping about whose marriage was falling apart than actually discussing literature. Business partners who'd sued their competitors into bankruptcy and bragged about it over cocktails. Neighbors who only showed up when there was an open bar and premium appetizers. Not a single person had responded with anything resembling actual affection for my family. Every RSVP was a calculation, a transaction, a strategic decision about networking and appearances, and maintaining position in a social hierarchy that valued wealth above everything else. The contrast with my own guest list was so stark it made my chest ache. Maya's response had come first within minutes of receiving my invitation. "I'd walk through fire for you, Claire. Of course I'm coming. Do you need help with anything? I can come early and set up, or bring food, or just be there for moral support? Whatever you need." Mrs. Chen had called me, instead of texting back, her voice warm and slightly tremulous. "Claire, sweetheart, you're inviting me to your Christmas party. Oh, honey, I'm honored. You're the daughter I wish I'd had. Thank you for thinking of an old lady. I'll bring my almond cookies, the ones you like." James Rivera's message had arrived late at night after what I assumed had been a long day at his office. "Claire, I don't even know how to thank you properly for this invitation. You changed my life when you gave me that job 5 years ago. You believed in me when I had nothing but an idea and a lot of hope. I owe you everything. Of course I'll be there. And I mean this, if you ever need anything at all, you call me." Carlos, the elementary school teacher whose classroom supply budget I supplemented every year, had sent a voice message because he was driving home from school. Miss Claire, it's Carlos. I just saw your invitation and I had to pull over because I got a little emotional. The kids in my class ask about you every week. When is Miss Claire coming back? Did Miss Claire see my report card? You're family to us, to all of us. I'll be there and I'm bringing my famous tamales. See you Christmas. Sophie's response had made me cry. She'd sent a video of herself sitting in her apartment, tears streaming down her face. Aunt Claire, I just got your invitation and I'm a mess. My mom would be so proud of the woman you are. She always said you were the kind of person who made the world better just by being in it, and she was right. Thank you for being my family when I needed one. I love you. See you Christmas. Each response was personal, heartfelt, specific. They remembered conversations we'd had, kindnesses I'd shown, moments we'd shared. They offered to bring food to help set up to arrive early or stay late. They called me family not because we shared DNA, but because we'd chosen each other. I sat on my couch that evening with my laptop open, 2 browser windows side by side. On the left, my mother's Instagram highlights showing her 50 VIP guests asking about valet parking and gift expectations and networking opportunities. On the right, my email inbox filled with responses from 40 people telling me they loved me, thanked me, considered me family. The difference wasn't subtle. My family's guests were asking what they would get from attending. My guests were asking what they could bring, what they could contribute, how they could show their appreciation for being included. One party was transactional, the other was relational. One party was about maintaining appearances and impressing the right people and being seen in the right place with the right crowd. The other was about gathering people who actually cared about each other, who showed up not because it would benefit them, but because they genuinely wanted to be there. My phone buzzed with a text from Maya. I've been looking at your guest list. These are good people, Claire. Real people. People who see you for who you are, not what you can do for them. Your real family is coming to your party. The other one, they never deserved you. I looked at that message for a long time before responding. I'm starting to see that, I typed back. I think I've always known it, but I kept hoping I was wrong. I kept thinking maybe if I gave enough, sacrificed enough, they'd finally see me the way these people do. Maya's response came immediately. You can't buy love from people who are incapable of giving it. But you can recognize love when it's freely offered. That's what Christmas night is going to be. 40 people who freely chose to love you, celebrate you, show up for you. Not because they had to, because they wanted to. I closed my laptop and walked out onto my balcony. The ocean was dark except for the moonlight catching the crests of waves, and the air was cold and clean. Somewhere 40 minutes north, my parents were probably reviewing their seating chart, making sure the most important guests were positioned for optimal conversation and networking. They were probably checking RSVPs again, counting confirmed attendees, calculating the impression they'd make. They had no idea that 40 minutes south I was planning something completely different. They had no idea that while they were focused on status and appearances and maintaining their position in a social hierarchy built on shallow connections and financial transactions, I was about to show everyone what real family actually looked like. Their party was about status. Mine would be about truth. Robert's email arrived at 6:30 the next evening, December 21st, just as the sun was setting over the ocean. The subject line read, "Credit report, urgent," and my stomach dropped before I even opened it. The preliminary report was a PDF attachment, 17 pages of financial history that I thought I knew intimately. I'd always been meticulous about my credit, checking it regularly, maintaining perfect payment records, keeping my utilization low. My credit score was 812, something I was proud of because I'd earned it through careful financial management. I scrolled through the first few pages. Everything looked familiar. My mortgage from when I'd owned the condo paid off. My business credit cards all current. My auto loan from 3 years ago paid in full. Normal. Expected. Mine. Then I reached page 9 and my entire world tilted. Pacific Business Credit Union. Business loan. Principal amount $175,000. Origination date March 15, 2019. Current balance $142,000. Payment status current. Borrower Claire Elizabeth Bennett. Co-signer Richard James Bennett. I read those lines 5 times. 6 years ago. $175,000. My name. I had never signed anything. I had never authorized anything. I had never even heard of Pacific Business Credit Union until this exact moment. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped my phone when I called Robert back. "I never authorized this," I said as soon as he answered. "This loan on page 9. I've never seen this before. I never signed anything." "Claire, I was afraid of that. I highlighted it in the report because when I saw it, something felt off. Look at the signature page. I've attached it as a separate file." I found the attachment, opened it. There was my signature, or something that looked like my signature. Claire Bennett in that distinctive cursive I'd developed in high school. But the more I looked at it, the more wrong it appeared. The loops in the C and the B were slightly different from how I actually wrote them. The pressure of the pen was inconsistent, heavier in some places than others, like someone had been tracing carefully rather than writing naturally. "Someone forged this," I said. "That's my assessment too, but I'm not a forensic expert. You need to get a professional handwriting analyst to examine it. If this is fraud, Claire, this is serious. This is identity theft, at minimum potentially bank fraud, depending on how the loan was obtained. My father is the cosigner." Robert was quiet for a moment. "Your father?" "Yes. Claire, I'm going to be very direct with you. If your father co-signed a loan using your name, without your authorization, using a forged signature, that's a felony. Multiple felonies, actually. You need to decide how you want to handle this, but you should know your options include pressing criminal charges." I thanked Robert and hung up, then immediately searched for forensic document examiners in Los Angeles. The first 3 I called were closed for the holidays or booked solid. The 4th answered a woman named Dr. Patricia Winters, who specialized in questioned documents for legal cases. "I need a handwriting analysis comparing a signature on a loan document to my genuine signatures," I said. "How fast can you do it?" "Standard turnaround is 2 weeks, but with the holidays, I'll pay triple your rate for a 48-hour preliminary analysis. I need results by December 23rd. There was a pause. "That's a very tight timeline." "I know, but I'm willing to pay whatever it takes. This is time sensitive. My rush fee for preliminary findings in 48 hours would be $3,000. That gets you a verbal report and a 1-page written summary. The full detailed report would follow after the holidays." "Done. I'm sending you the documents right now. How many examples of my genuine signature do you need?" "At least 5, preferably 10. Different documents, different time periods if possible." I spent the next hour scanning documents, old contracts, tax returns, business agreements, anything with my authentic signature. I uploaded everything to Dr. Winters' secure portal, along with the loan signature Robert had sent me. $3,000 was a lot of money for most people, but for me, it was worth every penny to know the truth. While I waited for the analysis, I threw myself into the final preparations for my Christmas party. I'd already hired the caterer and the jazz quartet, but now I added a professional videographer to work alongside the photographer. I wanted every moment documented, every genuine smile and laugh and expression of real affection. I wanted proof that family could be something other than what the Bennetts had shown me. I designed an Instagram carousel on my laptop, 5 carefully chosen images that told a story. The post was scheduled to go live on December 25th at 7:15 in the evening, 15 minutes after my party started, right when my parents' party would be falling apart. The caption was already written. "Tonight, I'm celebrating Christmas with my real family, not the people who share my blood, the people who share my values." I arranged for security at the villa, not because I expected trouble, but because I wanted everything to be perfect. I hired a valet service so my guests wouldn't have to worry about parking. I set up a donation box by the front door with a sign, In lieu of gifts, please donate to our local family shelter. I wanted this party to be about giving, about community, about everything a celebration should be. My phone buzzed constantly with updates from my mother's planning. Photos of the table settings, the champagne tower being assembled in their foyer, the designer florals being arranged. Evelyn's Instagram stories showed her trying on 3 different dresses, asking her followers which one made her look most elegant. Every post was a performance, a carefully curated display of wealth and taste. On December 22nd, my father texted me, "Don't forget that extra $3K for the premium wine. Caterer needs it by tomorrow." I stared at that text for a long moment, thinking about the $175,000 loan I'd never authorized, about the forged signature that was probably his wife's handiwork, about 38 years of being used and discarded and treated like an ATM with no feelings. I typed back, "Already taken care of," followed by a heart emoji. I had taken care of nothing. I had paid nothing. I had authorized nothing. But they didn't need to know that yet. My party budget was $12,000, every penny paid from my own account, every vendor confirmed and secured. The Bennett party budget was $18,750. The original $15,000 plus the $3,000 wine upgrade. All of it expected to come from me, none of it actually transferred. I made notes in my evidence file, added screenshots, documented every text, every Instagram post, every casual assumption that I would simply hand over money for a party I wasn't welcome at. The folder on my laptop was getting comprehensive now, a complete record of exploitation and exclusion, all of it time-stamped and saved, and ready to be used. Maya called that evening. "How are you holding up?" "I'm good," I said, and I was surprised to realize it was true. "I'm really good, actually. Focused." "Focused is better than furious." "Oh, I'm still furious. But it's the useful kind of fury now. The kind that sharpens your thinking instead of clouding it." 3 more days, Maya said. 3 more days. I agreed. The quieter I was, the sharper my blade became. My mother's call came at 8:30 on the morning of December 23rd, 2 days before Christmas. I was already awake, sitting on my balcony with coffee, watching the early morning surfers catch waves in the gray dawn light. When her name flashed on my screen, I let it ring 3 times before answering. "Honey, I'm so sorry to bother you this early." Her voice had that tight, controlled quality that meant she was close to panic but trying not to show it. "The caterer just called me. They say they haven't received payment yet. You did transfer it, right?" I took a sip of my coffee, perfectly calm. "I told you I'd handle it, Mom." I know, but they're saying nothing came through to their account. Can you check with your bank? Maybe there was a delay or something got held up." "That's strange. Let me look into it." "When Claire, they need payment today or they're going to cancel. Can you call them right now?" "I'll take care of it, Mom. Don't worry." I hung up before she could ask anything else, set my phone face down on the table, and smiled at the ocean. Then I did absolutely nothing. 2 hours later, my doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, and when I checked the security camera, I saw Evelyn standing on my front step, her face flushed with anger even through the grainy video feed. I took my time walking to the door, smoothing down my hair, composing my expression into something neutral and mildly curious. The moment I opened the door, Evelyn started talking. "Mom is freaking out. The caterer just called again and they're threatening to cancel everything. What's going on?" "I'm sorry, I'm not following. Cancel what?" "Our Christmas dinner because you haven't paid them." I tilted my head slightly as if genuinely confused. "Mom asked me to transfer money for the caterer." "I transferred money to my caterer for my party. Was I supposed to pay for someone else's event?" Evelyn's face went from flushed to deep red. "Don't play dumb, Claire. You know exactly what she meant." "Do I? Because I looked at the guest list you sent out and my name wasn't on it. So I naturally assumed you'd made other arrangements for payment since I wasn't invited." "You're invited. You can come." "Can I?" "Because your mother told me I could come but shouldn't draw attention to myself." "That doesn't sound like an invitation, Evelyn. That sounds like being told to stay out of the way." This is ridiculous. You're being petty and you know it. I'm being clear about boundaries. There's a difference. Evelyn stared at me for a long moment, and I saw something shift in her expression. Not understanding exactly, but recognition that this conversation wasn't going the way she'd expected. Fine, she said finally. Be that way. But when Mom and Dad find out you did this on purpose, don't expect them to just let it go. I haven't done anything on purpose except plan my own Christmas celebration. If your party is having payment issues, that's not my problem to solve. She turned and walked back to her car without another word, and I watched her pull out of my driveway too fast, tires squealing slightly on the pavement. I closed the door and added a note to my evidence file, December 23rd, 10:47 a.m. Evelyn arrived unannounced to demand payment for party I was not invited to. The call from my father came 30 minutes later. His voice was tight with an anger he wasn't even trying to hide. This isn't funny, Claire. We have 50 guests coming in 2 days and no food. That does sound like a problem. Have you tried calling other caterers? Don't patronize me. You know what this is about. You're playing some kind of game and it needs to stop right now. I'm not playing games, Dad. I'm hosting my own Christmas party at my own house with my own money. If you need a caterer for your event, you should probably figure out how to pay one. You always pay. This is what you do. This is your role in this family. Something about hearing him say it out loud, hearing him reduce my entire existence to a role, to a function, made something inside me go very still and very cold. Did you ask me to pay? Specifically, did you invite me to your party and ask if I'd be willing to contribute to the catering costs? We don't need to ask. It's understood. Nothing is understood anymore, Dad, and for the record, I don't see my name on your guest list, so I'm not sure why you'd expect someone who isn't invited to pay for your party. Stop playing these games. We need that money transferred today. I'm not playing games. I'm done playing ATM. I hung up on him, something I'd never done in my entire life. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. From something else. Power, maybe. Or just the simple act of saying no to people who'd never heard that word from me before. My phone buzzed immediately with a text from him. This conversation isn't over. I didn't respond. 2 hours later, an email arrived from Dr. Patricia Winters, the forensic document examiner. The subject line read, Preliminary Findings, Bennett Signature Analysis. I opened it with my heart pounding. Ms. Bennett, I have completed a preliminary examination of the questioned signature on the Pacific Business Credit Union loan document dated March 15, 2019, comparing it to the 10 exemplars of your genuine signature that you provided. My findings are as follows. The questioned signature exhibits multiple characteristics that are inconsistent with your authentic signature patterns. Specifically, the loops in the capital letters show different formation patterns. The baseline alignment is irregular in a way not present in your genuine signatures, and the pen pressure is inconsistent with natural writing flow. Based on these preliminary observations, it is my professional opinion that there is a high probability this signature was forged by someone attempting to replicate your handwriting. I will have a complete detailed report with photographic analysis ready for you by December 28th. Please let me know if you need any clarification on these findings. I read the email 3 times, then saved it to my evidence folder. I now had professional confirmation that someone had forged my signature on a $175,000 loan. Someone had committed fraud using my identity. And my father was the co-signer on that loan, which meant he knew exactly what had happened and had let it continue for 6 years. I opened my evidence folder and looked at everything I'd collected over the past 5 days. Screenshots of texts where they'd excluded me. Emails showing my name missing from guest lists. Documentation of 30 years of financial exploitation, and now proof of actual fraud. No payment, no party, no mercy. I woke on Christmas Eve to 47 missed calls. My phone had been buzzing all night on my nightstand, and when I finally picked it up at 7 in the morning, the notification screen was a wall of red. 18 calls from Diane, 16 from Richard, 13 from Evelyn. I scrolled through without listening to a single voicemail, then silenced my phone completely. The morning was overcast, that particular gray that Southern California gets in winter when the marine layer settles in and refuses to lift. I made my coffee and carried it out to the balcony, wrapping myself in a thick cardigan against the damp cold. The ocean was calm, almost flat, and I watched a handful of die-hard surfers paddling out to catch the small waves that rolled in with patient regularity. I felt peaceful. That was the strange thing, the unexpected thing. I'd spent days building toward this confrontation, collecting evidence, planning my own celebration, and I'd expected to feel anxious or angry or afraid. Instead, I felt calm in a way I hadn't experienced in years, maybe ever. It was the calm of finally making a decision after decades of indecision, the peace that comes from choosing action over passive acceptance. I spent the morning preparing my villa with the same attention to detail I brought to my business projects. I arranged fresh flowers in every room, white roses and eucalyptus, simple and elegant. I tested the sound system 3 times to make sure the jazz quartet would have perfect acoustics. I went through my guest list one final time and wrote a personalized thank you card for each person, 40 individual notes expressing genuine gratitude for their presence in my life. The emerald green dress I'd chosen hung in my closet waiting. It was elegant, but understated expensive, but not showy, the kind of dress that said I cared about the occasion without trying to prove anything. I laid it out on my bed along with simple gold earrings and the bracelet my grandmother had given me when I graduated from college. Around 3 in the afternoon, I called Grandma Rose in Arizona. She picked up on the second ring, her voice warm and bright despite her 82 years. "Claire, I was hoping you'd call. How are you, sweetheart?" "Grandma, I'm finally doing it. Standing up to them. I'm hosting my own Christmas party tomorrow night and I'm not paying for theirs." There was a pause, and then she laughed, a sound full of pride and satisfaction. "I'm so proud of you, sweetheart. Your mother never liked that I gave you that villa, you know. She called it interference when she found out." I froze my coffee cup halfway to my lips. "What?" Gave me another pause, this one longer. Oh, honey, I thought you knew. I thought surely by now someone had told you." "Told me what?" "Claire, I bought that villa 10 years ago and put it in your name. You didn't buy it yourself?" "Well, not entirely. You thought you did, and I wanted you to think you did, but the money came from me." I sat down heavily on my couch, the room tilting slightly around me. "I don't understand." Grandma Rose's voice was gentle but firm. "Do you remember 2015? You called me crying one night. You'd just sold your condo, the one you'd been so proud of, to pay off another one of your father's family loans that he'd guilted you into co-signing. You said you felt trapped, like you'd never be free of them." I remembered. I'd sat on the floor of that empty condo the day after closing, surrounded by moving boxes, and sobbed into the phone to my grandmother for an hour. "I'd just sold my software company for $8 million, Rose continued. "I had more money than I'd ever need for the rest of my life, and I had a granddaughter who deserved so much better than what she was getting. So I found that villa, bought it with cash, and put it in your name. I told you it was a special first-time buyer program through my financial advisor, that you qualified for amazing terms because of your credit and business success. But I made payments. I paid the property taxes and insurance, and you paid the ongoing costs, yes. That's what made you believe you'd bought it. And you had, in a way. You'd earned it through your hard work and success. I just made sure your family couldn't take it from you the way they'd taken everything else. I put protections in the deed. The property can't be sold or mortgaged without my co-signature. I wanted you to have a place that was truly yours, a place they couldn't guilt you into signing away." I sat there, holding my phone, looking around at the villa I'd thought represented my independence, my success, my escape. And it did represent those things, just not in the way I'd believed. My grandmother had seen what I couldn't see at the time, that I needed someone to protect me from my own family, that I needed a safety net they couldn't dismantle. Thank you, I whispered. Grandma, thank you. You're welcome, sweetheart. Now go enjoy your party tomorrow. And Claire, I'm proud of you for finally standing up to them. It's about time. After we hung up, I sat for a long time watching the light fade over the ocean. Even my greatest symbol of independence had been a gift from someone who actually loved me. The irony wasn't lost on me, but neither was the profound gratitude I felt. As evening fell, I lit candles throughout the villa and put on soft Christmas carols. I opened my laptop and reviewed my scheduled Instagram post one final time. 5 photos were queued up, the villa's exterior glowing with lights, the dinner table set for 40, a candid shot of me laughing with Maya from last week, a clear image of the $12,000 receipt with "paid in full" stamped across it, and finally a photo of me alone on the balcony looking out at the ocean with genuine peace on my face. The caption was ready: "They wanted my wallet. I gave it to people who wanted my heart. To my chosen family, thank you for showing me what love without conditions looks like. Merry Christmas." Scheduled for tomorrow, December 25th at 7:15 p.m. I set my phone to Do Not Disturb with only one exception programmed in the notification that my post had published. Before I shut down for the night, I listened to one voicemail from Diane just to hear what she'd say. Her voice was tight and cold. "I don't know what's gotten into you, Claire, but this is family. You don't just abandon family. I expect you to call me back immediately and resolve this situation before tomorrow." I deleted the message without responding. She still thought she could command me, still believed I'd fall in line like I always had. Tomorrow at 7:15, she'd learn otherwise. By 7:20, the whispers would turn into shouts. I wasn't there to see it happen, of course. But I know exactly how it unfolded, because Maya called me at 8 o'clock that night, barely able to speak through her laughter, and told me everything. She'd heard it from Mrs. Patterson, who'd been there, and witnessed the entire collapse. Later, 3 other guests would reach out to me directly, apologizing for not realizing sooner what my family had been doing to me. The guests started arriving at the Bennett estate at 6 o'clock sharp, just as the invitation had specified. The valet service my father had paid for separately was ready, uniformed attendants directing luxury cars into neat rows along the circular driveway. The house itself looked spectacular. Diane had hired her favorite decorator for $4,000, and every room gleamed with white lights, silver garlands, and enormous arrangements of white roses and holly. The bar was set up in the living room with mid-tier champagne and wine, nothing premium since I'd refused to fund the upgrade. Guests milled about in their formal attire, the women in cocktail dresses and the men in suits, everyone making the kind of small talk that fills space without saying anything meaningful. But, in the dining room, the tables were set with those gold-rimmed chargers Evelyn had posted about crystal glasses catching the candlelight. Everything positioned exactly as the decorator had arranged it. Everything except the food, which didn't exist. By 6:15, Diane was checking her watch every 30 seconds. Mrs. Patterson told Maya she'd noticed because Diane kept catching the light with her diamond bracelet, little flashes that punctuated her growing anxiety. Evelyn had positioned herself in the corner near the kitchen, her phone pressed to her ear, her voice getting progressively louder with each call she made. At 6:30, one of Richard's business partners approached Diane. "This all looks lovely. When will dinner be served?" Diane's smile didn't waver, but Mrs. Patterson said her eyes looked panicked. "Any moment now, the caterer is just running a bit late. You know how holiday traffic can be." Several guests exchanged glances. It was Christmas Day. There was no traffic. Everything was closed. At 6:45, Richard's phone rang. He pulled it from his pocket, saw the catering company's name, and answered quickly. In his haste, he must have hit the speaker button by accident, because suddenly the caterer's voice was echoing through the living room loud enough for at least a dozen nearby guests to hear clearly. "Mr. Bennett, this is Jennifer from Golden Coast Catering. I'm calling one final time to inform you that we will not be providing services for your event tonight. We never received payment despite multiple reminders sent to the email address on file. Additionally, the deposit check we received 2 weeks ago bounced." Richard's face, Mrs. Patterson said, went from confused to pale to deep red in the span of seconds. My daughter paid you. She told me she transferred the money. Sir, no one has paid us. We have no record of any payment from Claire Bennett or anyone else in your family. We sent invoice reminders on December 15th, 18th, and 20th. Without payment, we cannot provide service. Richard hung up, but the damage was done. The guests who'd overheard started whispering to the people near them, and the whispers spread like ripples across water. By 7 o'clock, Diane was in the kitchen desperately calling restaurants trying to order pizza or Chinese food, or anything that could feed 50 people. But it was Christmas Day. Everything was either closed or fully booked with their own holiday celebrations. Evelyn was texting me frantically. Mrs. Patterson had seen her phone screen and told Maya the messages were increasingly desperate. "Where are you? Answer me. You're ruining everything." Richard tried to salvage what he could, moving through the remaining guests with forced joviality. "Just a mix-up with the vendor folks. We're sorting it out. Can I get anyone another drink while we wait?" But the local developer who'd come to discuss the Henderson contract pulled Richard aside. Mrs. Patterson heard the entire exchange because she'd positioned herself strategically nearby. "Richard, I thought we were going to discuss business tonight. Over dinner, you said." "Yes, absolutely. Why don't we step into my study and—" "You said over dinner. There is no dinner. I've been here an hour and I'm starting to think there was never going to be dinner." By 7:10, the first couple made their excuses and left. Then another couple. Then a group of 5 who'd apparently carpooled together. Mrs. Patterson, who thrived on this kind of social disaster, pulled out her phone and took a photo of the empty dining room, those beautiful gold chargers and crystal glasses arranged around absolutely nothing, and posted it to Facebook with the caption, "When the party promised champagne wishes and caviar dreams but delivered sparkling disappointment." At 7:15, there were maybe 15 guests left standing awkwardly in the living room, unsure whether to leave or wait to see what would happen next. And then someone checked their phone. "Oh my God," a woman's voice said loud enough to carry. "Is this Claire Bennett?" She showed her phone to the person standing next to her, who gasped and pulled out their own phone. Within seconds, everyone remaining was looking at their screens, and the living room filled with the shocked murmurs of people realizing they'd been watching the wrong party fall apart. Evelyn saw it on someone's phone over their shoulder and literally screamed. She threw her own party. Diane grabbed the phone from the nearest guest's hand and stared at my Instagram post. Mrs. Patterson said the color drained from her face so completely she looked like she might faint. Richard looked over Diane's shoulder at the screen. "She's at her villa, throwing a party, right now." The photos told the story more clearly than any words could. My villa's exterior glowing and warm and inviting. My dining table set for 40, with actual food visible actual guests, smiling. Maya and me laughing together like people who actually enjoyed each other's company. The receipt crystal clear showing $12,000 paid in full for a celebration I'd funded completely myself. And finally me standing on my balcony overlooking the ocean, looking peaceful and free and genuinely happy. The caption was simple. They wanted my wallet. I gave it to people who wanted my heart. By 7:45, the Bennett house was empty except for Richard, Diane, and Evelyn standing among the ruins of their failed party. The caterers who'd never been paid. The guests who'd discovered they'd been used as props in a performance that was never going to happen. The carefully curated image that had finally publicly catastrophically collapsed. And then someone checked Instagram. While my family's party was collapsing 40 minutes north, my villa was filled with warmth and light, and the kind of joy that can't be manufactured or bought. My first guests arrived at 6 o'clock exactly. Maya and her husband Carlos, both of them carrying a dish, despite my instructions that they didn't need to bring anything. "We wanted to contribute," Maya said, hugging me tightly. "That's what family does." The jazz quartet was set up in the corner of my living room, their instruments gleaming under the soft lighting. They'd started playing the moment the first guest walked in, filling the space with smooth, sophisticated melodies that felt celebratory without being overwhelming. Fairy lights were strung along the ceiling beams, and candles flickered on every surface, casting dancing shadows that made the whole villa feel magical. In the open kitchen, the chef I'd hired was preparing dishes in full view of everyone, the scents of roasted vegetables and herb-crusted salmon and fresh-baked bread wafting through the house. Guests could watch him work, ask questions, see exactly where their food was coming from. It was the opposite of my family's approach, where everything was hidden behind closed doors and carefully curated appearances. I stood near the entrance for the first hour, greeting each person as they arrived. Mrs. Chen came with her famous almond cookies in a tin she'd wrapped in red paper. James brought his wife and their new baby, who he insisted I hold while he took photos. Sophie arrived with a handmade card she'd designed herself. Every single person got a genuine hug from me and heard the same words, "Thank you for being here. You mean the world to me." By 6:30, everyone was seated at the long table I'd set up in my dining room, expanded with rented sections to accommodate 40 people. At each place setting was a handwritten card I'd prepared the day before. I watched as people found their seats and discovered their notes watched their faces as they read what I'd written, Mrs. Chen picked up hers with trembling hands and read it aloud to the person next to her. "You remind me what families should be present, kind and genuine. Thank you for every smile and wave, every conversation at the mailbox, every time you've made me feel seen." She pressed the card to her chest, tears in her eyes. James read his silently first, then showed it to his wife. "Thank you for believing in yourself when I believed in you. Watching you build your business has been one of the greatest privileges of my life. You've taught me that investing in people is always worth it." The atmosphere in that room was everything I'd hoped for. Real laughter, not the performative kind that fills uncomfortable silences. Genuine conversations, where people listened instead of just waiting for their turn to talk. The easy comfort of people who actually liked each other and wanted to be there. At 7 o'clock, I stood and raised my glass. The room went quiet immediately, everyone turning toward me with expressions of warmth and attention. "I want to thank you all for being here tonight," I began, and my voice was steadier than I'd expected. "Not because you had to be here. Not because you were obligated or expected or guilted into coming, but because you chose to be here." I paused, looking around the table at 40 faces that were all focused on me with genuine interest and affection. For years, I confused obligation with love. I thought if I paid enough, gave enough, sacrificed enough, I'd finally be enough for the people who were supposed to love me. Several people nodded, and I saw recognition in their eyes. "But you all showed me something different. Real family doesn't take, it gives. It doesn't exclude, it embraces. It doesn't demand, it appreciates." My voice broke slightly on the last word, and I took a breath before continuing. "So, thank you. For seeing me. For showing up. For being my real family. For teaching me what love without conditions actually looks like." The room erupted in applause, and I saw tears on more than a few faces. Maya was crying openly, and when I sat down, she leaned over and whispered, "She's finally free," to James, who was sitting on her other side. But I heard it, and I knew she was right. At 7:15, my phone buzzed with a notification. I pulled it from my pocket and saw the alert, "Your scheduled post has been published." The photographer I'd hired had done extraordinary work. The 5-photo carousel was perfect. The first image showed my villa's exterior, the warm golden light spilling from every window, fairy lights visible through the glass, the whole place looking like something from a dream. The second was a wide shot of this exact moment, 40 people around my table, faces bright with laughter and genuine happiness. The third was a candid shot of Maya and me from last week, both of us laughing so hard we were doubled over. The fourth was the receipt positioned so every line was clearly readable. Catering, flowers, music, total cost $12,000, every item marked paid in full. The fifth and final image was me standing on my balcony at sunset yesterday, looking out at the ocean with an expression of peace I barely recognized as my own. The caption was everything I'd wanted to say. Tonight, I'm celebrating Christmas with my real family. Not the people who share my blood, the people who share my values. For years, I funded parties where I wasn't welcome. Tonight I funded a party where everyone here actually wanted me. They wanted my wallet. I gave it to people who wanted my heart. To my chosen family. Thank you for showing me what love without conditions looks like. Merry Christmas. I watched the view count climb. 100, 300, 500. Within 3 minutes it hit 1,000. In a town the size of ours, where everyone knew everyone else's business, that meant the post was spreading fast. I saw notifications popping up, shares tags, comments from people I barely knew expressing support or shock or solidarity. Someone tagged Mrs. Patterson, who I knew was at my parents' party right now. I imagined her phone buzzing, imagined her pulling it out to check, imagined her face as she realized what she was seeing. I put my phone face down on the table and returned my attention to my guests. Dessert was being served, individual chocolate lava cakes with vanilla bean ice cream. The jazz quartet had shifted to playing my favorite song, a Duke Ellington piece my grandmother had loved. 3, 2, 1, I thought. Post. And then my phone lit up with a call. Even face down I could see the name illuminated on the screen. Mom. I declined my mother's call without hesitation and set my phone back on the table face down. Less than a minute later it lit up again. Richard. Declined. Then Evelyn. Declined. I could feel the rhythm of their panic even through the silent buzzing against the tablecloth. At 7:30, a text notification slid across my screen, even though I'd silenced calls. I glanced at it long enough to see Diane's message in all capital letters, "Answer your phone." I didn't respond. 2 minutes later, another call from Richard, then another from Diane, then Evelyn again. By 7:35, Evelyn had switched to texting. "You ruined Christmas. I hope you're happy." I read it while the jazz quartet transitioned into a new song, while Sophie was telling a story about her latest design project, while Mrs. Chen was passing around her almond cookies and insisting everyone try one. The calls continued through dessert. Every few minutes my phone would light up with a new attempt. Diane, Richard. Evelyn. Diane again. Richard again. The pattern was almost hypnotic in its desperation. At 8:30, during a brief lull in conversation while plates were being cleared, I picked up my phone and scrolled through the voicemail notifications. 23 messages in just over an hour. I pressed play on the first one from Diane. Her voice was shrill, barely controlled. "How could you do this to us? We're your family. You've embarrassed us in front of everyone who matters. Call me back right now." Richard's message was angrier. "This is unacceptable, Claire. You've humiliated us publicly and destroyed relationships we've spent years building. You will answer your phone and explain yourself immediately." Evelyn's was the most revealing. "You're pathetic. You've always been jealous that I was the one Mom and Dad were proud of. This is sick. This is actually sick. You need help." I deleted them all and set my phone back down. The irony of Evelyn calling me pathetic while she stood in an empty dining room at a party that had collapsed because they'd expected me to fund, it wasn't lost on me. Between 9 and 10 o'clock, the call pattern intensified. Diane called 10 more times. Richard 8, Evelyn 5, and then new names started appearing. Aunt Linda, my mother's sister, called twice. Cousin Mark, who I'd spoken to maybe 3 times in the past decade, called once. They were recruiting the extended family now, trying to use numbers and collective pressure to force me to respond. The voicemails from this period showed a shift in strategy. Diane's voice had changed from angry to pleading. "Honey, please, we need to talk about this. I know you're upset, but we can work this out. Just call me back." Richard's message was more calculated. "The Henderson deal fell through. He saw your social media post and called to cancel our meeting. We need to discuss those vendor contracts you signed and how we're going to handle the financial liability." I almost laughed. I'd signed nothing. He was still trying to manipulate me, still trying to make their disaster my responsibility. Evelyn's 10 o'clock message was pure surrender. "Fine. You win. Are you happy now? Is this what you wanted? Just call me back, please." By 10:30, the bargaining phase had begun in earnest. Diane left a rambling message about how family fights sometimes, but family is forever, and we can get past this if we just talk. Richard's voice had lost its anger entirely, replaced with something that almost sounded like reason. Maybe we overreacted about the seating arrangement at dinner. It was thoughtless. Let's have coffee tomorrow and discuss this calmly. Evelyn's midnight message was the last one I listened to before deleting my entire voicemail inbox. Look, I'm sorry if I said anything hurtful over the years. I didn't realize you were this upset. Can we please talk? Mom's crying? Dad's furious. Everyone's asking what happened. Just call me back. By the time midnight arrived, my phone showed 110 missed calls. 42 from Diane, 38 from Richard, 25 from Evelyn, 5 from various extended family members who'd been conscripted into their campaign. But while my phone was lighting up with their desperation, my party continued in the warm glow of genuine celebration. Around 9:30, James's wife leaned over and asked, "Is your phone okay? It keeps lighting up." I glanced at the screen. 73 missed calls at that point. It's fine. Just some people who are used to having immediate access to me, learning that access has been revoked. Maya, sitting on my other side, touched my arm gently. Are you going to answer them? I looked around the table at 40 faces, at people who'd shown up because they wanted to be here, not because they wanted something from me. People who'd brought food to contribute rather than asking what gift was expected. People who'd written heartfelt RSVPs instead of demanding to know if there would be valet parking. No, I said loud enough for everyone to hear. Tonight isn't about them. It's about all of you. They've had 38 years of my attention, my money, my energy, my constant attempts to be enough. Tonight you have all of me, the people who actually deserve it. The table erupted in applause, and I saw tears in more than a few eyes. Mrs. Chen stood up and raised her glass, to Claire for knowing her worth. Everyone raised their glasses and echoed, "To Claire." The party continued until 11:30. The jazz quartet played their final set. People lingered over coffee and conversation, nobody rushing to leave, nobody checking their watches anxiously. When guests finally did start to go, each one stopped to give me a genuine hug and say something that mattered. Sophie held both my hands and said, "My mother would be so proud of you tonight." James promised to call me next week to schedule lunch. Carlos invited me to visit his classroom in January so the kids could thank me in person. Mrs. Chen was the last to leave. She hugged me tightly, her small frame surprisingly strong. "This was the best Christmas I've had in 20 years, Claire. Thank you for including me. Thank you for seeing that an old woman could still matter." I hugged her back, breathing in her familiar scent of lavender and almond. "Thank you for being someone worth including. Thank you for showing me what kindness looks like when it's freely given." After everyone left, I stood in my living room surrounded by empty wine glasses and dessert plates and the lingering warmth of real connection. My phone lay on the table where I'd left it dark, now finally silent after hours of desperate buzzing. I picked it up and scrolled through the call log one more time. 110 attempts to reach me. 110 demands for my attention, my explanation, my capitulation. I deleted the entire call history and went to bed with a peace I hadn't felt in decades. But humiliation echoes louder than applause. By morning, the whole town knew. I woke at 10 on December 26th to sunlight streaming through my bedroom windows and the distant sound of waves. For a moment, I lay there in the quiet, feeling the absence of anxiety that had lived in my chest for as long as I could remember. Then I reached for my phone. 3,847 notifications. My Instagram post had been viewed 15,000 times. In a town where everyone knew everyone, where social circles overlapped and gossip traveled faster than wildfire, that number meant the story had spread to virtually every household within a 50-mile radius. I scrolled through the comments, watching the split in public opinion play out in real time. "I was at their party," someone named Jennifer had written. "Can confirm no food, total disaster. They blame their daughter who wasn't even there." Another comment from a username I didn't recognize. "This is the most justified thing I've ever seen. Good for her for standing up to exploitation. But there were critics, too. This is cruel. They're still your family. Airing family drama online is classless regardless of what happened. Two wrongs don't make a right. I read them all with a strange detachment. The criticism didn't land the way it might have a week ago. These people didn't know what it felt like to be erased from your own family photos. They didn't understand what it meant to fund someone else's celebration while being told you weren't important enough to invite. Maya called at 10:30, her voice bright with something between excitement and concern. "Girl, you broke the internet. The local news is calling it the Christmas catastrophe. Channel 7 wants to interview you. How do you feel?" I thought about the question seriously. "I feel free," I said finally. "For the first time in my life, I feel completely free." "Good. That's exactly how you should feel. Have you looked at the local Facebook groups yet?" "No. Why?" "Because you need to see what the vendor community is saying. It's validating everything you've been telling me for years." After we hung up, I opened Facebook and searched for the group Maya had mentioned, Small Business Owners, Malibu area. It took me less than a minute to find the post she was talking about. Golden Coast Catering had posted at 9 that morning, "PSA to all vendors, if a client promises my daughter will pay, or my son will handle it. Get payment in writing, and verify directly with that person. We just lost $8,000 on a Christmas event because we trusted a verbal promise. Don't make our mistake." The comments section was a revelation. The florist, who'd done arrangements for my father's 60th birthday, had written, "Same family stiffed us last year on a $3,500 order. We had to threaten legal action to get partial payment. They used their daughter's name as a guarantee, but she never authorized anything." An event planner I recognized from my mother's anniversary party. "They still owe me $2,500 from a 2022 event. Every time I call, they say their daughter handles the finances and will call me back. She never does. Now I understand why." A rental company. "We blacklisted them after a bounced check in 2021. They claimed their daughter would cover it, but when we tried to contact her, she had no idea what we were talking about." I sat on my couch, reading comment after comment, watching a pattern emerge that was even more extensive than I'd realized. My family hadn't just been exploiting me. They'd been using my name, my reputation, my credit as a shield for years of non-payment and broken promises to local businesses. Vendors had assumed I was the one refusing to pay when in reality, I'd never even been told about half these arrangements. I took screenshots of everything and added them to my evidence folder. This wasn't just about my personal experience anymore. This was documented proof of a systematic pattern of fraud. At 2 o'clock, I called my lawyer. Margaret Chen, no relation to Mrs. Chen, had handled my business contracts for 5 years and knew me as meticulous and honest. When I explained what I needed to discuss, her voice shifted from friendly to professional immediately. "I need to talk about fraud charges. I have evidence that someone in my family, my father or possibly my mother, forged my signature on a $175,000 business loan 6 years ago." There was a pause. "That's a serious allegation, Claire. Do you have documentation?" "I have the loan documents showing my forged signature. I have a forensic handwriting analysis confirming the signature isn't mine. I have proof I never authorized the loan and wasn't aware of its existence until 4 days ago. Come in tomorrow morning. Bring everything. If this is what it appears to be, we're talking about identity theft fraud and possibly bank fraud. These are felonies with significant prison time attached. I don't necessarily want anyone to go to prison. I want the loan removed from my name and I want them to face consequences, but I'm not sure prison is. We'll discuss your options tomorrow, but you need to understand the gravity of this situation. Someone used your identity to obtain nearly $200,000. That's not a small matter." After we hung up, I spent an hour organizing my evidence folder into categories: financial exploitation, emotional abuse, systematic exclusion, vendor fraud, and loan forgery. Each category had dozens of entries, all time-stamped and documented. At 4 o'clock, my phone rang with Grandma Rose's number. I answered immediately. "Your mother called me this morning," she said without preamble. "She was crying, saying you'd humiliated them publicly and destroyed their reputation. She wanted me to call you and convince you to apologize." "And what did you say?" I asked her if she'd told me about the years of financial exploitation, the systematic exclusion from family events, or the forged signature on a loan you never authorized. I heard the smile in my grandmother's voice. She hung up on me. But before she did, she said something interesting. She said you'd always been ungrateful, that they'd given you everything, and you'd repaid them with cruelty. "I've given them $147,000 over 8 years, I said quietly. "I know, sweetheart, and I'm not surprised by any of this. Your mother married your father for money, not love. I told her not to, but she didn't listen. When Richard's business started failing 6 years ago, she became desperate. Ruthless even." I sat up straighter. "What business failure?" "Richard's commercial real estate ventures hit serious trouble in 2019. Several deals fell through. He had outstanding debts, and he was facing potential bankruptcy. I suspected at the time that he might try to use your name since you had perfect credit and he knew you'd do anything for family approval. But I had no proof, and I didn't want to make accusations I couldn't back up." "So the loan," I said slowly, "was to save his business." "Most likely. And when your mother found out, instead of stopping him, she probably helped him cover it up. That's who she is, Claire. She'll do anything to maintain the lifestyle and image she thinks she deserves." We talked for another 20 minutes, and with each revelation the picture became clearer. My family wasn't just thoughtless or self-centered. They were actively, deliberately exploitative. They'd built their entire lifestyle on my money and my reputation, and when that wasn't enough, they'd committed fraud to take even more. After Grandma Rose and I hung up, I sat on my balcony watching the sun set over the ocean. My phone was mercifully quiet. I'd blocked my parents' and Evelyn's numbers after midnight. The viral post had stopped gaining momentum, settling at around 16,000 views, with the comments still split between support and criticism. Tomorrow, I'd meet with my lawyer. We'd discuss pressing charges, removing the loan from my name, protecting myself from future exploitation. We'd talk about restraining orders and cease and desist letters and all the legal mechanisms that existed to enforce boundaries when family refused to respect them. But tonight I just sat in the peace of my villa, the villa my grandmother had bought me, the villa my family could never touch, and felt the weight of 38 years of trying to be enough finally lifting from my shoulders. And I wasn't done yet. Margaret Chen's conference room had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the ocean, and on December 27th, the morning light was sharp and clear. I arrived with 2 file boxes and my laptop and spent the first 20 minutes spreading everything across her massive table in organized categories. Bank statements showing $147,000 in family event expenses over 8 years. Email threads where my parents had promised recognition that never materialized. Text messages documenting systematic exclusion from guest lists and family photos. Screenshots of Instagram posts showing parties I'd funded with captions that erased my existence. Photos where I'd been cropped out before being sent to relatives. The forged loan documents with Dr. Winter's handwriting analysis attached. Vendor statements from the Facebook group confirming years of non-payment using my name as false security. Margaret walked around the table, slowly picking up documents, reading emails, examining photos. When she finished her circuit, she looked at me with something like awe. "This is comprehensive, Claire, meticulous even. When did you start collecting all of this?" 2 years ago, Thanksgiving 2023. She set down the email she'd been reading and met my eyes. So the Christmas party collapse wasn't an impulsive act of revenge. This was a calculated public revelation. I needed them to expose themselves publicly with witnesses present. I needed documentation of their pattern, not just my word against theirs. I knew that if I simply told people what they'd been doing, they'd call me dramatic or oversensitive or claim I was misunderstanding. But if I let them demonstrate their behavior in front of 50 of their closest associates, if I documented everything leading up to it, then nobody could deny what they were. Margaret nodded slowly, a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. You're more strategic than most of my corporate clients. The memory of how this had started was still vivid even 2 years later. I'd been sitting in Grandma Rose's living room in Arizona, having driven 8 hours to spend Christmas with her after that disastrous Thanksgiving where I'd been cropped from the family photo. It was late evening and we were drinking tea on her patio under the desert stars. "Sweetheart, you look exhausted," Grandma had said, studying my face with concern. "And not just physically tired. You look worn down." "I funded another party. I spent all day cooking, set a beautiful table, paid for everything. And then they took a family photo without me. Just the 3 of them. Mom posted it online with a caption about being blessed with my girls, plural, but I wasn't in the picture." Grandma had been quiet for a long moment. Then she'd asked the question that changed everything. "How many times has this happened?" "I don't know. I never counted. Maybe always." "Then start counting. Start documenting." She'd leaned forward, her voice firm and clear. "Claire, you're an accountant. You know how to track patterns, how to build a case. Treat this like you would a suspicious business partner. Record everything for 2 years. Track every dollar, every exclusion, every broken promise. And then when you have irrefutable evidence, you can decide what to do with it." I'd driven home the next day and created that encrypted folder before I'd even unpacked my suitcase. I'd titled it Family Records to keep it innocuous, and I'd started entering data immediately. Every party I funded, every thank you speech that didn't mention me, every photo I was asked to step out of. I'd set up a hidden voice recorder app on my phone legal in California with one-party consent, and I'd recorded conversations where they talked about me like I wasn't there or shouldn't matter. For 730 days, I'd been building this case. "Your master evidence file," Margaret said, pulling me back to the present, "is admissible in both criminal and civil proceedings. You have recorded conversations that are legal under California's one-party consent law. You have financial records showing a clear pattern of exploitation. You have a timeline of emotional abuse with corroborating witnesses. You have screenshots of exclusionary communications that they sent in writing. You have photos documenting your erasure from family events. You have third-party vendor statements confirming they used your name fraudulently, and you have forensic evidence of signature forgery on a loan worth $175,000. She paused, looking at me directly. "Claire, you have enough here to press criminal charges against whoever forged that loan. Identity theft and fraud are felonies in California. Your father is the co-signer, which means he either forged your signature himself or knew it was forged and used the loan anyway. Either way, he's criminally liable." "I don't want Richard in prison," I said, and I meant it. Despite everything, despite all the evidence spread across this table, I didn't want to destroy him. I just wanted to be free. "I want the truth on record. I want them to acknowledge what they've done publicly and legally. I want the loan removed from my name. I want assurance they'll never use my identity again. But I don't know if prison achieves those goals." Margaret considered this. "Then we use the evidence as leverage. We schedule a formal family meeting with legal representation on both sides. We present everything you have and make your demands clear. They remove the loan from your name, they publicly acknowledge the financial exploitation, and they agree to no contact terms. If they refuse, we file criminal charges and let the district attorney decide whether to prosecute. They'll fight it. They'll claim I'm lying or exaggerating or... Claire, they can't fight this. You have documentation they sent themselves. You have witnesses. You have forensic evidence. You have vendor corroboration. This isn't your word against theirs anymore. This is their own words, their own actions, recorded and preserved and irrefutable." I looked at the evidence spread across the conference table, 2 years of meticulous documentation. 730 days of treating my family like the suspicious business partners they'd proven themselves to be. Every spreadsheet, every screenshot, every saved email was a piece of a larger story that nobody could deny or dismiss. They'd thought I was their victim, the daughter who would accept anything they did because I was too desperate for their approval to fight back. They'd thought I was their ATM existing solely to fund their lifestyle and enhance their reputation. They'd thought I was too dumb to notice when they stole from me, too weak to stand up to them, too damaged to demand better. They'd been wrong about all of it. They thought I was their victim. But I'd been building the case against them for 730 days. The morning of December 28th, I woke to a notification that Evelyn had posted something on Instagram. I almost didn't look, but curiosity won out. Her post was a masterclass in manipulation. A photo of her looking somber and vulnerable, eyes slightly red as if she'd been crying. The caption read, "Heartbroken to address this publicly, but family comes first. My sister has been struggling with some personal issues we've tried to help her through. Her recent behavior has hurt many people, including vendors and guests who showed up in good faith. We ask for privacy during this difficult time." Within 2 hours, the post had 500 likes. The comments were exactly what she'd been aiming for. Stay strong. Family is everything. She'll realize that eventually. She'll regret this someday when it's too late. They were painting me as unstable, as someone having a breakdown who needed help, rather than someone who'd finally stood up to decades of exploitation. It was a calculated move, and I had to admit it was effective. People who didn't know the full story would naturally sympathize with the family that appeared concerned and hurt, rather than the daughter who'd aired grievances publicly. My phone buzzed with texts from extended family members I barely knew. Aunt Linda. Your mother is devastated. Whatever happened between you, this public humiliation is cruel. Cousin Mark. I don't know what they did, but airing family business online was wrong. This should have been handled privately. Maya called at noon. They're trying to make you look crazy. You need to respond. I will, I said, already opening my laptop, but not emotionally, factually. I rarely used social media beyond Instagram, but I had a LinkedIn account with 2,500 connections built over years of consulting work. My profile was professional, credible, established. If I was going to counter their narrative, this was the platform to do it from. At 2 o'clock, I posted. The tone was measured professional, devoid of emotion or accusation. Just facts. I rarely discuss personal matters publicly, but misinformation requires correction. Over the past 8 years, I contributed $147,000 to family events at which I was systematically excluded from photos, guest lists, and acknowledgement. I recently discovered my name was forged on a $175,000 business loan I never authorized. I have documentation of all these claims verified by legal professionals and forensic experts. This isn't about revenge or mental health. It's about establishing boundaries and protecting myself from ongoing financial exploitation. I share this to encourage others in similar situations. You're not obligated to fund your own exclusion. I wish my family healing and accountability. I attached carefully redacted bank statements showing the dollar amounts, but blocking account numbers and personal information. I attached the summary page of Dr. Winter's handwriting analysis that confirmed forgery without revealing sensitive details. Everything was professional, verifiable, and impossible to dismiss as emotional exaggeration. The response was immediate. Within 30 minutes, my professional network was commenting. This takes courage to share. Thank you for speaking up. Financial abuse in families is more common than people realize. I'm glad you're protecting yourself. The documentation here is irrefutable. This isn't drama, this is fraud. The post was shared 300 times in the first 2 hours. People I'd worked with, clients I'd consulted, for colleagues who knew my reputation for thoroughness and honesty, all of them were amplifying my side of the story with their own credibility attached. At 4 o'clock, a comment appeared that made my throat tight. Mrs. Eleanor Rodriguez. A woman who'd been friends with my family for 30 years, who'd attended every Bennett party I could remember, wrote, I watched this young woman be overlooked her entire childhood. While one daughter got new cars and European trips, this one was told to be grateful for what you have. While one daughter's achievements were celebrated with elaborate parties, this one's accomplishments were met with, "That's nice, dear. I'm glad she's finally standing up for herself. Some of us have been watching this happen for decades." Her comment got 200 likes within an hour. Other longtime family acquaintances started commenting with similar observations, corroborating what I'd said without me having to ask them to. At 5 o'clock, I received a LinkedIn message from someone named Maria Gonzalez. The profile photo showed a woman in her 60s with kind eyes. "Miss Claire." The message began, "I don't know if you remember me. I was your family's housekeeper from 1995 to 2010. I've been following what's happening and I'm so proud of you for standing up to them. I remember when you were little they treated you like you were invisible. I have something you might need to see." She'd attached a link to a private video folder. My hands were shaking as I clicked it. The videos were old digitized from what must have been VHS tapes. The first one was labeled Claire 10th Birthday 1996. I pressed play and watched my younger self sitting at the kitchen table with a small store-bought cake. My parents were both there, but they were on their phones, bulky cell phones from the 90s, barely paying attention while I blew out the candles alone. The next video was labeled Evelyn 10th Birthday 1992. It showed a backyard full of children, a bounce house, a hired magician, and my parents beaming while Evelyn opened presents in front of an audience of 30 kids. There were more. Christmas morning videos where Evelyn had a mountain of gifts and I had 2 or 3 small packages. Footage of my parents constantly telling young me, "Don't bother your sister, she's busy." "Why can't you be more like Evelyn? Stop asking for attention." I sat at my laptop watching these videos with tears streaming down my face. Maya had come over and was sitting beside me, her hand on my shoulder. "You were just a kid," she said softly. "I spent 38 years thinking something was wrong with me," I whispered. "Thinking if I could just figure out what I was doing wrong, they'd finally see me. But it was them. It was always them." Maria's message continued. "I kept these tapes because even then I thought someday you might need proof that you weren't imagining things. They were never kind to you, Miss Claire. Never. I'm sorry I didn't speak up then, but I'm speaking up now. You deserve so much better than what they gave you." I responded to Maria, thanking her, telling her I remembered her kindness during those years. Then I saved every video to my evidence folder. By the end of the day, my LinkedIn post had been viewed 10,000 times and shared over 500. The narrative my family had tried to create, that I was unstable, that I was cruel, that I was having some kind of breakdown, was being systematically dismantled by documentation, professional verification, and witnesses who'd watched me be mistreated for decades. The truth was louder than their lies, and it had witnesses. The consequences arrived with the efficiency of dominoes falling. On December 29th, my father's business partner sent a formal termination letter that was CC'd to me presumably by accident. "Your involvement in financial fraud and the resulting public scandal makes continued partnership untenable. Effective immediately, Bennett and Associates Partnership is dissolved." My mother's book club president called her that morning, I know, because Maya heard about it from Mrs. Patterson within hours. "Diane, we need to take a break from meetings for a while. Several members are uncomfortable given the recent situation." The country club where my father had golfed for 20 years called him directly. Maya's husband, who worked in their accounting department, told her they'd placed Richard's membership under formal review after multiple members complained. Evelyn's situation was perhaps the most devastating. Her PR firm called her into a meeting with HR and her direct supervisor. "The social media crisis involving your family is affecting our company's reputation," they told her. "We're placing you on administrative leave pending an internal review of whether your continued employment aligns with our values." I learned all of this through the town's efficient gossip network, through Maya's connections and Mrs. Patterson's gleeful reporting and the general sense that everyone was watching the Bennett family's carefully constructed facade crumble in real time. But what I didn't know until much later was what happened inside the Bennett house that evening. Maya eventually heard the story from a neighbor who'd been walking their dog past the estate around 8 o'clock and heard shouting through the windows. Richard's voice loud and bitter. "This is your daughter. You raised her to be vindictive." Diane's response equally sharp. "My daughter. You're the one who committed fraud using her identity. To save your lifestyle, the house, the cars, the parties you insisted we throw to keep up appearances. None of this would have happened if you'd been satisfied with what we actually had." Evelyn sobbing, "Can you both just stop?" "This is partially your fault too," Diane had said to Evelyn, her voice cold. "You encouraged us to keep asking her for Christmas money. You told me to. You always told me she was good for it, that she owed us for everything we'd given her." According to the neighbor, the shouting continued for another 20 minutes before going quiet. What nobody saw was Evelyn climbing the stairs to her old childhood bedroom, locking the door behind her, and sitting on the floor of her closet. She'd told me about this later, much later, when we finally talked. How she'd pulled out an old shoebox she'd hidden behind her winter coats when she was 16. Inside were letters she'd written, but never sent, all of them addressed to my real mom. Letters asking why she felt different, why she didn't fit, why her mother seemed to look at her with something that felt like resentment masked as duty. But I didn't know any of that on December 29th. I was sitting in my villa reviewing documents with Maya when my phone rang with an unknown number. I almost didn't answer. But something made me pick up. "Is this Claire Bennett?" "Yes, who is this?" "My name is Patricia Coleman." The woman's voice was careful, measured, like she'd rehearsed this conversation 100 times. "I think I need to talk to you about your father. About something that happened 39 years ago." My heart started pounding. "What do you mean?" "I've been following the news about your family. All the posts, the articles, everything that's come out. And I realized that after seeing what they've done to you, what they've taken from you, you have a right to know the truth about Evelyn." I sat down slowly, my legs suddenly unsteady. "What about Evelyn?" Patricia's voice broke slightly. "She's my daughter. Your father and I had an affair in 1986. I was his secretary. When I got pregnant, your mother found out and she made a deal. She agreed to raise Evelyn as her own if I disappeared completely and never contacted any of you again. I've stayed silent for 39 years because I thought I was protecting Evelyn, giving her a better life. But after seeing what your family has become, what they've done to you, I realized my silence has been protecting the wrong people." Everything clicked into place with devastating clarity. Evelyn's blonde hair and blue eyes that matched Richard's exactly. Diane's cold treatment of me, her biological daughter, who represented the real family she'd wanted, contrasted with her obligation to raise the proof of Richard's betrayal. Evelyn being the golden child not out of love, but out of Richard's guilt, and Diane's determination to perform perfect motherhood, even for a child who reminded her daily of her husband's infidelity. "Can we meet?" I asked. "Tomorrow. I'll bring her birth certificate, the original one, before they falsified it. And Claire, I want to meet her, Evelyn, if she's willing." I gave her up thinking she'd have a better life, but I've watched from afar for 39 years, and I see now that maybe I was wrong. Maybe neither of you had the family you deserved. After we hung up, I sat in silence for a long time. Maya was staring at me, waiting. "Evelyn isn't my sister," I said finally. "Not biologically. She's the daughter my father had with his secretary. My mother agreed to raise her to avoid scandal. That's why Evelyn was always favored Richard's guilt. That's why Diane resented me. I was a reminder of what she'd lost, what she should have had." Maya put her hand on mine. "Oh, Claire. It explains everything. Why we never looked alike. Why Evelyn was treated like precious treasure while I was treated like an inconvenient obligation. Why Diane could never quite look at me without that expression I could never identify. It was resentment. I was her biological daughter, but Evelyn was the one she had to prove she could love to save face. I thought about Evelyn in that empty house fighting with her parents who'd lied to her for 39 years. I thought about Patricia Coleman, a woman who'd given up her daughter and stayed silent for 4 decades because she'd believed it was the right thing to do. And I realized that this story was even more complicated than I'd thought. Evelyn wasn't just my sister who'd been cruel. She was my father's secret-made flesh, raised in a lie used as a prop in a performance of family that had never been real. Evelyn wasn't my sister. She was my father's secret-made flesh. I met Patricia Coleman at a small coffee shop in Santa Monica at 2 o'clock on December 30th. She'd chosen a table in the back corner away from the windows, and I recognized her immediately, even though we'd never met. She had Evelyn's face, or rather Evelyn had hers. The same blonde hair now streaked with silver, the same blue eyes, the same elegant bone structure that had always made Evelyn photograph beautifully. Patricia stood when she saw me, her hands trembling slightly. "Claire, thank you for meeting me." We sat down, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she began. "I was your father's secretary in 1985. I was 24 years old, fresh out of business school, excited to be working for what seemed like a successful real estate firm. Richard was 40, married to your mother, and you were 2 years old. I saw photos of you on his desk, a toddler with dark curly hair and serious eyes." She paused, looking down at her coffee. "The affair started that summer. I'm not proud of it. I knew he was married, knew he had a daughter, but he was charming and attentive, and I was young and stupid enough to believe him when he said his marriage was already over, that he and Diane were staying together for appearances." I listened without interrupting, watching her face as she spoke. "The affair lasted about a year. In early 1986, I realized I was pregnant. I was 5 months along when I finally told Richard. He panicked. Absolutely panicked. And then a week later, Diane called me." Patricia's hands tightened around her coffee cup. I expected rage threats, maybe even violence. Instead, she was eerily calm. She said she knew about the affair, knew about the pregnancy, and she had a proposal. She would raise my baby as her own. They would tell everyone she was pregnant, she'd wear padding, fake symptoms, the whole performance. I would give up the baby immediately after birth, sign away all parental rights, and disappear completely from their lives. "She offered you money," I said quietly. $50,000. A fortune for a 24-year-old secretary in 1986. And the alternative she presented was terrifying. She said if I refused, if I tried to keep the baby or cause any scandal, they would destroy me. Richard had connections, she said. They'd make sure I never worked again. They'd claim I was unstable, that I'd seduced a married man and was now trying to extort money from him. They'd sue me for everything I had and everything I'd ever have. Patricia's voice broke. I was terrified. I was broke. I had no family support. My parents had disowned me when I told them I was pregnant. So I took the deal. I thought I was giving my daughter a better life. A stable home, 2 parents, money, opportunity. Everything I couldn't provide. She reached into her bag and pulled out a folder. Inside were copies of 2 birth certificates. She laid them side by side on the table. The first one, yellowed with age, read, "Female infant, born March 15, 1986. Mother Patricia Coleman. Father Richard Bennett." The second, slightly newer-looking, read, "Female infant, born March 15, 1986. Mother Diane Bennett. Father Richard Bennett." The first one was filed at the hospital when Evelyn was born. The second one was filed 3 days later. Richard knew someone at the county records office who owed him a favor. There was no legal adoption, no court proceeding, no home study, just falsified documents. She showed me photos, next old Polaroids of her in a hospital bed holding a tiny blonde newborn. The resemblance was unmistakable. Then a copy of a check, $50,000 drawn on Richard Bennett's business account, dated March 20th, 1986, made out to Patricia Coleman. "This amended birth certificate," I said, studying the documents. "If there was no legal adoption, then this is fraud." Yes, that's what I learned years later when I finally consulted a lawyer. But by then, Evelyn was 15. What was I supposed to do? Come forward and destroy her entire life, tell her everything she knew about her family was a lie. I'd already abandoned her once. I couldn't do that to her again. I looked at Patricia's face at the grief that had lived there for 39 years. So my whole childhood, my mother resented me because I represented her real family, the one that failed. Every time she looked at me, she saw evidence that her marriage had been destroyed by Richard's affair. And Evelyn was the living proof of his betrayal, Patricia said. But Diane had to raise her, had to perform perfect motherhood for her. Richard overcompensated out of guilt, showering Evelyn with attention and favoritism. And you became invisible, the unwanted reminder of what should have been. They raised her to be like them, I said, thinking of Evelyn calling me a walking wallet. Evelyn rolling her eyes when I asked to be included in family photos. Cruel, entitled. Patricia was crying now, tears running down her face unchecked. I gave her up thinking I was giving her a better life. I've watched from afar for 39 years Christmas cards they sent to business associates that I managed to get copies of social media posts, anything I could find. I've watched her become exactly what they made her. And I've watched them destroy you in the process. Does Evelyn know any of this? I don't know, but I saw those childhood videos your housekeeper posted, and I saw the letters to my real mom. Some part of her has always known something was wrong. I sat back processing everything. Evelyn's entire life had been built on a lie. She'd been used as a pawn in Diane's performance of perfect motherhood, overindulged by Richard's guilt, raised to believe she was special while I was disposable. And none of it had been her choice. She deserves to know the truth, I said finally. I'll tell her. But she needs to see these documents herself, hear it from someone who can give her the full story. Patricia nodded. I want to meet her, if she's willing. I gave her up once, but I'd like the chance to know her now if she'll let me. I took photos of everything, both birth certificates, the hospital photos, the check. Then I pulled out my phone and texted Evelyn. We need to talk, alone. My villa tomorrow at noon. It's about your birth. Come alone. 20 minutes passed with no response. Then, what are you talking about? You'll understand when you see what I have to show you. Another long pause. Finally, fine, noon. I looked at Patricia across the table at this woman who'd carried a secret for 39 years, who'd given up her daughter thinking it was the right choice, who'd watched from the shadows as that daughter grew up in a family built on lies. My sister wasn't my sister, and she had no idea. Evelyn arrived at my villa at noon on December 31st, New Year's Eve, and the moment I opened the door, I could see she'd come prepared for a fight. Her arms were crossed, her jaw set, her entire posture defensive. Make this quick, she said, not moving past the threshold. I have plans tonight. Sit down, please. Something in my tone must have convinced her this wasn't another argument about Christmas, because she stepped inside and followed me to the living room. I'd laid out the documents on the coffee table that morning, both birth certificates side by side, the hospital photos of Patricia holding a newborn, the $50,000 check, Patricia's written statement. Evelyn sat on the edge of the couch, still tense, still ready to bolt. I sat across from her and took a breath. You're not Mom's biological daughter. Dad had an affair with his secretary in 1985. Patricia Coleman is your birth mother. For a long moment, Evelyn just stared at me. Then she laughed, sharp and bitter. This is ridiculous. Another one of your games to hurt us. Look at the documents. You're making this up too? Look at them, Evelyn. She reached for the birth certificates with shaking hands. I watched her read the first one, then the second. Watched her pick up the photo of Patricia holding a baby with blonde hair and blue eyes. Watched her examine the check dated March 1986. Who is this woman? Her voice had gone small, childlike. Your mother. Your real mother. Patricia Coleman. She was 24 when she got pregnant. Dad and Mom made a deal. Patricia would give you up, they'd raise you as theirs, and she'd disappear completely. Evelyn dropped the papers like they'd burned her. Her breathing got fast and shallow, and I recognized the signs of a panic attack starting. They lied to me for 39 years. I got up, filled a glass of water in the kitchen, came back, and sat beside her on the couch. Not touching, but close enough to offer presence. She took the water with trembling hands. All my life, she said, tears starting to fall. Mom was cold, distant. No matter what I did, no matter how perfect I tried to be, she never looked at me the way other mothers looked at their daughters. I thought if I was just good enough, successful enough, if I made her proud enough, she'd finally love me the way I needed her to. She couldn't love you, I said gently. Every time she looked at you, she saw Dad's betrayal. The affair that destroyed her marriage, but that she had to hide to save face. Evelyn was crying openly now. And you were her real daughter, the one she actually gave birth to. That's why she hated you. You reminded her of what she'd lost, what her family should have been. We were both props in their performance, I said. You were the golden child she had to pretend to love. I was the scapegoat she could blame for everything wrong in her life. They made us compete, Evelyn said, understanding dawning in her eyes. They pitted us against each other. You were supposed to be less than me so I could feel special. And I was supposed to be better than you, so Mom could prove she was a good mother even to a child who wasn't hers. Neither of us was actually seen, I said. Evelyn looked at me, really looked at me maybe for the first time in our lives. I was horrible to you. I called you a walking wallet. I mocked you for trying to be part of the family. You learned it from watching them treat me that way. That's not an excuse. No, I agreed. It's not. You were also a victim of their dysfunction, Evelyn. But you still made choices. You still chose cruelty when you could have chosen kindness. She nodded, wiping at her tears with the back of her hand. Did you know about this before Christmas? Is that why you did all of it? No, I found out 2 days ago. Christmas was about the money, the exclusion, the decades of being used as an ATM while being erased from the family narrative. I gestured at the documents. This explains the deeper dysfunction, why everything felt so wrong all the time. Evelyn picked up the photo of Patricia again, studying it closely. Does she want to meet me? She does, if you're willing. I look exactly like her. You do? Evelyn was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, When I was 16, I was looking for something in Mom's nightstand, and I found a letter. It wasn't addressed to anyone, just dated a few months after I was born. It said, You'll never be mine, but I'll make you presentable. I thought she was writing about Dad, about their marriage, but she was writing about me. The cruelty of that sentence, you'll never be mine, but I'll make you presentable, made my chest ache. Diane had written down her determination to perform motherhood even while resenting the child she was performing it for. We both spent our lives trying to be enough for people who couldn't see us, I said quietly. Evelyn stood up, gathering the documents carefully. I need time to process this. All of it. The lies, the truth about my birth, what it means for who I am. That's fair. She turned to face me, and I saw something in her expression I'd never seen before, genuine remorse. Evelyn, I'm not saying this fixes what happened between us. The things you said over the years, the way you treated me, the casual cruelty that still hurts. You're learning now that you were manipulated, that you were also a victim in this family dynamic, but you still made choices. You still chose to participate in my exclusion. I know. Her voice broke. I'm so sorry, Claire. I believe you're sorry. But sorry doesn't erase 38 years of being treated like I didn't matter. Sorry doesn't undo the damage. So where does that leave us? I thought about that. I don't know yet. You have Patricia's contact information, now I'll text it to you. What you do with that is your choice. Whether you meet her, whether you try to build a relationship with your biological mother, that's entirely up to you. But you can't go back to pretending anymore. None of us can. You can't unsee what's in those documents. You can't unknow what you've learned. Evelyn nodded slowly. And us, You and me. I need time too. Time to figure out if we can build something real, something honest, or if too much damage has been done. I don't have that answer yet. She walked to the door, then turned back. For what it's worth, I hope we can. I hope I haven't destroyed that possibility completely. We'll see, I said. She walked out with the truth in her hands, copies of birth certificates and hospital photos, and a check that proved her entire life had been built on a lie. And I knew that truth would destroy what was left of our family, would shatter the last illusions Evelyn had been clinging to about who she was and where she came from. But sometimes things need to be destroyed before they can be rebuilt into something honest. She walked out with the truth in her hands, and it would destroy what was left of our family. After Evelyn left, I sat on my couch for a long time, staring at the ocean through the windows without really seeing it. The conversation had drained me in ways I hadn't anticipated. I'd expected anger or defensiveness from her, maybe even denial that would last longer than it did. What I hadn't expected was the raw vulnerability, the realization that we'd both been victims of the same dysfunctional system in different ways. At 6 o'clock, my doorbell rang. I almost didn't answer, assuming it was Evelyn coming back or maybe Maya checking on me. But when I opened the door, Grandma Rose was standing there with a small suitcase at her feet. "Grandma, what are you doing here?" "It's New Year's Eve, sweetheart. You think I'd let you spend it alone after the week you've had?" I pulled her into a hug and felt something break loose inside me. The tears came hard and fast, all the exhaustion and emotion of the past 10 days finally spilling over. Rose held me tight, one hand rubbing circles on my back like she'd done when I was a child, whispering that it was okay, that I was safe now. When I finally pulled back, she picked up her suitcase and walked past me into the villa like she owned the place. Which I was learning she kind of did. We sat on the balcony as the sun started its descent toward the horizon, turning the ocean gold and orange. Rose poured us both sparkling cider and settled into the chair next to mine with a satisfied sigh. "Your mother called me this morning," she said conversationally. "She was hysterical. Said you'd lost your mind, that you were destroying the family, that I needed to call you and talk some sense into you." "What did you say?" Rose smiled, sharp and proud. "I said it's about time someone in this family found their spine." I laughed despite everything, and it felt good. "Grandma, you mentioned on the phone that you gave me this villa. I need you to tell me the whole story. All of it." She took a sip of her cider, looking out at the ocean. 10 years ago, 2015, you called me late one night. You were crying so hard I could barely understand you at first. When you finally calmed down enough to talk, you told me you'd just had another fight with Richard and Diane. They'd asked you to co-sign on a car loan for Evelyn, and you'd agreed because you always agreed. It was the third time you'd co-signed something that benefited them, but put all the risk on you. I remembered that night. I'd been sitting on the floor of my condo, the one I'd eventually have to sell, feeling trapped and helpless and furious at myself for not being able to say no. "You said something that night that broke my heart," Rose continued. "You said, 'I feel trapped, Grandma. Like I'll never be free of them. Like no matter what I do or how much I give it will never be enough, and I'll be stuck in this pattern forever.' I'd just sold my software company for $8 million. I had more money than I'd ever need for the rest of my life. And I had a granddaughter who'd never once asked me for anything. Not money, not help, not even advice unless I offered it first. So I decided to do something." She turned to look at me directly. "I found this villa. It had just come on the market, and the moment I saw it, I knew it was perfect. Ocean view private, far enough from your parents that they couldn't just drop by unannounced. I bought it for $2 million paid in cash and put it entirely in your name. But I added a clause to the deed that it couldn't be sold or mortgaged without my co-signature as co-owner." "I thought I bought this place," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I thought I saved up and qualified for a loan, and your savings covered the property taxes, the insurance, the furnishing, all the ongoing costs. That's what made you believe you'd bought it yourself, And I told you there was a special first-time buyer program through my financial advisor that you'd qualified for incredible terms because of your credit score and business success. You were so proud of yourself, Claire. So happy. I couldn't take that away from you by telling you it was a gift. Why didn't you tell me after? Why let me believe a lie? Because you needed to believe you did it yourself. Your confidence was already shattered from years of your parents telling you that you weren't enough, that Evelyn was the successful one, that you should be grateful for what you had. If I'd told you the villa was a gift, you would have felt obligated to me, indebted. You would have tried to pay me back or felt like you owed me something. I wanted you to have a place that was truly yours, a place they couldn't touch or guilt you about or manipulate away from you. I was crying again, but quietly now. You protected me. I tried to. I wish I'd done more, done it sooner. But yes, I protected you the only way I knew how. Rose reached down beside her chair and pulled out a small wooden box I recognized from her house. I want to show you something. Inside the box were letters. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds, all in my handwriting at various ages. She pulled out the first one, the paper yellowed and soft with age. Dear Grandma. I'd written in careful second-grade printing. They forgot my birthday again. But Evelyn got a brand new car for hers. Am I doing something wrong? Love, Claire. Rose handed me another. Dear Grandma, I got straight A's on my report card, but Mom only talked about Evelyn's B+ in English class. She said Evelyn was finally applying herself. And another. Dear Grandma, I paid for Thanksgiving again. I don't know why I keep hoping they'll thank me this time. Sometimes I wonder if they even like me. I kept every letter you ever sent me, Rose said. Every phone call you made when you were upset. Every time you needed someone to see you, I was seeing you. I've always seen you, Claire. I looked at my grandmother, this 82-year-old woman who'd sold her company and used the money to buy me freedom, who'd kept 30 years of letters as proof that I mattered, who'd driven 8 hours or flown across the country countless times just to be there when I needed someone. You've been my real family this whole time. Blood doesn't make family, sweetheart. Love does. Showing up does. Being present and seeing someone for who they really are, that's what makes family. Those people at your Christmas party, the ones who showed up because they wanted to be there. That's your real family. And me, I'm your family too. I'm staying in Malibu for a while, Rose added. I rented a condo on Pacific Coast Highway, close enough to visit but far enough to give you space. If you'll have me around, that is. I'd love that. I'd love that more than anything. As the sun set, completely turning the sky purple and pink, Rose raised her glass. To new beginnings, and to the family we choose. I clinked my glass against hers. To the family we choose. I finally had what I'd been searching for my entire life, a family that saw me, that chose me not for what I could give them, but for who I was. But even as Rose and I sat together in the peace of that moment, I knew the old family wasn't done imploding yet. Grandma Rose and I spent New Year's Day preparing for the meeting. Margaret had arranged everything, a neutral location, her firm's largest conference room, legal representation, required for both sides. The meeting was scheduled for January 2nd at 10 in the morning. When I arrived with Rose and Margaret, my parents were already there with their lawyer, a stern-looking man in an expensive suit who kept whispering urgently to Richard. Evelyn arrived separately 10 minutes later and deliberately chose a seat away from our parents, closer to where I sat. The conference room had windows overlooking the ocean, and the morning light was harsh and unforgiving. There was nowhere to hide in that brightness. I've called this meeting to establish facts and set boundaries going forward. I began, my voice steadier than I'd expected. Richard immediately interrupted. This is ridiculous. We're family. We don't need lawyers and formal meetings to... Mr. Bennett, Margaret said firmly. Please let your daughter finish. I opened the first folder and began presenting my evidence systematically. The spreadsheet showing $147,000 over 8 years, with columns for date event amount and acknowledgement received. The acknowledgement column was entirely empty, except for one entry. Evelyn took credit in toast. Screenshots of text messages and emails showing systematic exclusion. Photos where I'd been cropped out before being sent to relatives. Guest lists that didn't include my name for events I'd funded. And finally, the forged loan documents with Dr. Winter's handwriting analysis attached. Richard's face went from red to pale as I laid out each piece of evidence. His lawyer was taking notes furiously. "That loan was for our family business," Richard said when I finished. "You benefited from it indirectly. The business supports all of us." What family business? I was never told about any business venture. I never saw financial statements or business plans. I never signed anything authorizing the use of my name or credit. You would have said no. Exactly. Because it wasn't my debt to take on. Someone forged my signature on loan documents. That's felony fraud, Dad. Diane spoke up, her voice tight. We gave you a good life, a home, and education opportunities. You act like we did nothing for you. You gave me what any parent should give their child. That's called basic parenting, not doing me a favor. And we both know I wasn't treated the same as Evelyn. I turned to face my mother directly. You resented me my entire life. Every interaction, every conversation, I could feel it. I want to know why. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. Evelyn isn't your biological daughter. The room went completely silent. Richard's lawyer stopped writing. Diane's face drained of color. I advise you not to answer that question, their lawyer said quickly. Diane turned to Richard, her voice shaking with rage. You told her. After everything you told her. I didn't tell her anything. Evelyn stood up. I know. Claire showed me the birth certificate, both of them, the original and the falsified one. She showed me the photos of Patricia holding me in the hospital, the $50,000 check you paid her to disappear. Richard and Diane both turned to stare at Evelyn. You lied to me for 39 years, Evelyn continued, her voice breaking. You made me compete with Claire for scraps of affection that neither of us ever actually got. You used her as a walking ATM to fund your lifestyle. You used me as a prop to prove you were a perfect family. And you call that family? Evelyn, you don't understand, Diane started. I understand perfectly. Claire was your biological daughter, but you resented her because she reminded you that your marriage was broken. I was Dad's affair baby, but you had to raise me to save face. So you made both of us miserable in different ways. Grandma Rose spoke for the first time, her voice cutting through the tension. This isn't between parents and children anymore. This is about adults who exploited their child, demanding accountability. I've watched you neglect Claire since she was born. I bought her that villa 10 years ago so she'd have somewhere safe from you. Best investment I ever made. Chitoy, I took a breath and presented my 4 demands. 1. You have 60 days to work with the bank and transfer that $175,000 loan out of my name. Refinance it under your names, sell assets, do whatever you need to do. But if my name is still on that loan after 60 days, I'm filing a police report for identity theft and fraud. The bank will investigate and you'll likely face criminal charges. Richard's lawyer was writing again, underlining something multiple times. 2. You will never ask me for money again. Not for parties, not for loans, not for anything. That relationship is over. 3. You will publicly acknowledge to our extended family that you've mistreated me financially and emotionally. I don't need a grand apology, but I need the truth on record, so people stop thinking I'm the villain in this story. 4. I'm going no contact for at least 1 year. If you show up at my home uninvited, contact my workplace, or harass my friends to reach me, I will pursue legal action, including a possible restraining order. Richard stared at me. You can't be serious. I've never been more serious about anything in my life. Evelyn added quietly. I want to meet Patricia, my birth mother. Diane stood up so fast her chair nearly tipped over. Absolutely not, I forbid it. You don't get a say anymore, Mom. Or should I call you Diane since you're not actually my mother?" Evelyn's voice was cold. "You lied to me for my entire life. You don't get to control what I do now." "I'll give you her contact information whenever you want it," I said to Evelyn. "But I need time away from all of this. From all of them." Evelyn nodded, tears streaming down her face. Richard's face tightened, and I saw something shift in his expression. His lawyer was shaking his head, clearly signaling him not to speak, but Richard ignored him. "There's something else you need to know," Richard said. His lawyer grabbed his arm. "Richard, I strongly advise—" "About the loan?" Richard continued, looking directly at me. "I didn't forge your signature." Dad's face tightened. He had one more secret to confess. Richard's lawyer was frantically shaking his head, but my father wasn't looking at him anymore. He was looking at me with something that might have been desperation or defiance or both. "I didn't forge your signature," he said again. "The handwriting analysis clearly shows your mother did it." The room went so quiet I could hear someone's watch ticking. Diane's face went from pale to sheet white. "What are you doing?" she hissed at Richard. "I'm done lying. I'm done protecting you after you threw me under the bus about Evelyn. You want everyone to think I'm the villain? Fine, but I'm not going down alone." Richard turned back to me, and the words started spilling out like he'd been holding them in for years. 6 years ago, 2019, my commercial real estate business was failing. Several deals had fallen through. I had outstanding debts, and I was facing potential bankruptcy. I needed $175,000, or we'd lose everything: the house, the cars, the lifestyle your mother had become accustomed to. "So you decided to steal from me," I said flatly. "I told Diane we needed to take out a loan. She said we'd never qualify with my credit score after the business problems. She's the one who suggested using your name. She said you had perfect credit, that you'd never check your credit report, that you'd never find out." Diane stood up. "You said it was the only way. You said we'd lose everything." "It was the only way because you spent us into debt: the parties, Diane, the constant entertaining, the image maintenance, the keeping up with everyone in the neighborhood. Do you know how much you spent on parties in 2018 alone? $47,000? On parties. Those parties were investments in your business relationships. They were ego trips. And when the business started failing, you couldn't accept that we needed to scale back. You insisted we keep up appearances." Richard looked at me again. "She practiced your signature for weeks. I'd come home and find her at the kitchen table with old documents you'd signed, tracing the letters over and over. She's the one who went to the bank with the falsified loan application. She forged everything." I turned to my mother slowly. "You forged my signature." Diane's defiance crumbled. "We would have lost everything. The house we'd lived in for 30 years, our standing in the community, everything we'd worked for. You had good credit, a stable income. So you committed felony fraud using my identity. I was protecting this family." "No," I said, my voice hard. "You were protecting your lifestyle, your image, your ability to throw parties and impress neighbors and pretend everything was perfect." Grandma Rose spoke, her voice cutting. "I knew you were selfish, Diane, but this is criminal." Diane turned on Rose. "You never liked me. From the moment Richard and I got engaged, you've always favored her over me. You've always taken her side. Because she was a child who deserved love and you denied her that. You resented your own daughter because she reminded you that your marriage wasn't what you wanted it to be." Evelyn suddenly spoke up, understanding washing over her face. "That's why you treated Claire so badly. She was your biological daughter, but you resented her because Dad's affair with Patricia destroyed your picture-perfect marriage. Claire represented what you should have had: a real family and honest relationship. Instead, you were stuck raising the physical proof of Dad's betrayal. So you took all your rage and resentment out on Claire." Evelyn looked at Diane with something like horror. "And you wanted Claire trapped in that loan the same way you felt trapped in this marriage. It wasn't just about the money. It was about making her suffer the way you've been suffering." Diane said nothing. Tears were streaming down her face, but she didn't speak. Margaret's voice was calm and professional. "Mrs. Bennet, you've just confessed to identity theft and fraud in front of multiple witnesses, including attorneys from both sides. Do you understand the legal implications of what you've just admitted?" Diane's voice came out barely above a whisper. "I was trying to save our family." I stood up, gathering my documents. "You didn't have a family, Mom. You had an image, a performance. And I paid for it financially, emotionally, and now apparently criminally. You have 60 days to fix that loan and get my name off it. If you don't, I'll file charges and let the district attorney decide what happens next." I looked at my father. "Don't contact me. Don't show up at my home. Don't send relatives to plead your case or try to guilt me into backing down." Then I turned to Evelyn. "You're welcome to reach out to me if you want. But I need time. Time to process all of this time, to figure out who I am without them time to heal." Evelyn nodded, tears on her face. "I understand." Grandma Rose and I walked out of that conference room together, leaving Richard and Diane and their lawyer behind. In the elevator, Rose squeezed my hand. "I'm proud of you," she said. "I feel like I should be sadder," I admitted. "Like I should be mourning or grieving or something. But I just feel relieved." Rose smiled. "You can't mourn what you never had, sweetheart. You've spent 38 years grieving a family that never existed. Now you're free to build something real." As we walked to the parking garage, I thought about my mother sitting at the kitchen table, practicing my signature over and over, preparing to commit fraud that would use my identity, my credit, my financial future to save a lifestyle she valued more than she'd ever valued me. It wasn't just Dad's scheme. It was Mom's hand that signed my name away. The call from the real estate agent came in October on a crisp fall morning when the marine layer had finally burned off, and the ocean was that perfect shade of blue that made me grateful every day for the villa Grandma Rose had given me. "Claire, the property you inquired about last month is officially on the market. The owners need to sell quickly due to financial difficulties." I set down my coffee. "How quickly are we talking?" "They're doing a short sale to avoid foreclosure. Very motivated sellers. The bank has already approved the listing price, but they'd likely accept a reasonable offer below that to close fast." "Make an offer. 15% below asking price. Cash purchase, no contingencies, close in 30 days. Cash, Claire. This is a $2 million property." $425,000, I corrected. "That's what it's worth in a short sale. And yes, cash. I can have proof of funds to you within the hour." The property was my childhood home, the Bennett estate where I'd spent 38 years trying to be enough, where I'd been cropped out of family photos and excluded from celebrations I'd funded, where my mother had sat at the kitchen table practicing my signature to commit fraud. 10 months had passed since that meeting in Margaret's conference room. 10 months during which Richard's business had collapsed completely, during which creditors had come calling for debts he couldn't pay, during which my refusal to cooperate with refinancing that fraudulent loan had left him with no options. The house had been seized, put into short sale, and now it was mine for the taking at a fraction of what it was worth. 3 weeks later, I stood in the empty foyer with the keys in my hand. The realtor walked beside me, her heels clicking on the marble floors that Diane had been so proud of. "It needs updating," she said, gesturing at the dated fixtures and the wallpaper that was peeling in corners. "But the bones are good. Location is excellent. Why this specific house, if you don't mind me asking?" "I grew up here." I said simply. Time to rewrite its story. I walked through each room slowly. The kitchen, where I'd stood frozen in the hallway on December 18th, overhearing them laugh about how dumb I was. The living room, where family photos had been taken without me, where parties I'd funded had celebrated people who couldn't be bothered to thank me. The dining room, where I'd sat at the edge of the table, always on the periphery, never quite included. Each room held painful memories, but standing there with the keys in my hand, with the deed that would be transferred to my name, those memories felt different, smaller, less powerful. I bought the house for $425,000, paying cash from my business account. The market value was closer to $500,000, even in its current condition, but the bank accepted my offer within 48 hours. Richard and Diane had 60 days to vacate before moving to a small 2-bedroom rental condo across town. My plan was to renovate the house completely, update the kitchen, modernize the bathrooms, repaint every wall to erase the color schemes Diane had chosen. And then, I was going to rent it to Evelyn. We'd stayed in contact over the 10 months, careful contact with clear boundaries. She'd been in therapy twice a week. She'd met Patricia multiple times, building a tentative relationship with the woman who'd given birth to her. She'd left her PR firm and started her own small business working with nonprofits. And she'd been paying me back slowly $500 a month for years of cruelty she was trying to make amends for. I asked her to meet me at the house on a Saturday afternoon in early November. She pulled up in her car and stared at the estate for a long moment before getting out. "You bought it," she said when she reached the front door where I was standing. "I did." "Why?" "Because I can. And because I'm offering you the first chance to rent it." Evelyn looked at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. "You want me to live here? At fair market rate, $2,800 a month, standard lease agreement, normal landlord-tenant relationship." "Why would you do this?" "Because you've spent 10 months in therapy working on yourself. You met Patricia and you're building a real relationship with her. You left a toxic work environment and started your own business doing work that actually matters. You're trying to break the cycle we were both raised in. This house can be part of that, or it can keep being a symbol of everything that was wrong. I'm choosing to make it something different." Evelyn's eyes filled with tears. "I don't deserve this. I don't deserve your kindness after everything I said, everything I did." "Deserve has nothing to do with it. This is about choice. I'm choosing to give you a chance to build something better. But there are conditions." "What conditions?" "Mom and Dad are not welcome here. This is your space, not theirs. If you want to maintain a relationship with them, that's entirely your choice. But it doesn't happen in this house." Evelyn nodded slowly. "They've been staying with me in my apartment since they had to leave here. It's been hard. Really hard. They haven't changed at all. They still blame you for everything, still act like they're the victims. Then this gives you space, physical and emotional space to set boundaries." "Do you think," Evelyn's voice broke, "do you think we'll ever be real sisters? Not the twisted version we were raised to be, but actually sisters?" I thought about that question carefully. "I think we can try, but it starts with you respecting boundaries, paying rent on time, building trust slowly, brick by brick. I'm not your ATM, Evelyn. I'm not your savior or your therapist or your mother figure. But I can be your landlord who wants you to succeed. Who's willing to give you the space to become whoever you're supposed to be without them controlling the narrative? That's more than I deserve." "Yeah," I agreed. "It is." She looked at the house, then back at me. "I'll take it. And Claire. Thank you for seeing something in me worth saving when I'm not sure I would have seen it myself." After she left, I stood alone in the empty house one more time. I hadn't bought it for revenge, though there was a certain poetic justice in owning the space where I'd been made to feel so small. I hadn't bought it to punish my parents, though watching them lose it had been its own form of closure. I bought it for control. Control over my past, control over the narrative, control over what this space would mean going forward. They'd used this house to perform a version of family that was all image and no substance. Now I was going to use it to help someone who was genuinely trying to become something better than what she'd been raised to be. I didn't buy the house for revenge. I bought it for control over my past and my future. December 25th arrived exactly 1 year after everything had changed. I woke early watching the sunrise paint the ocean in shades of rose and gold and felt a peace I hadn't known was possible. This year, I wasn't funding someone else's celebration. I wasn't hoping to be included in photos. I wasn't wondering if this would finally be the year they saw me. This year, I was simply celebrating with people who wanted to be here. By 6 o'clock, my villa was filled with 30 guests. Maya arrived first, as always, bringing her husband and their new baby. Mrs. Chen came with her famous almond cookies. James brought his wife and twins. Sophie Carlos and a dozen others filled the space with warmth and laughter, and the kind of genuine affection that can't be performed or faked. Grandma Rose was already there, having stayed the night before. She'd moved to Malibu permanently 8 months ago, living in a condo 10 minutes away, and we had dinner together at least twice a week. Patricia Coleman arrived around 6:30, and I greeted her with a hug that had become natural over the past year. She'd become an unexpected friend, someone who understood complicated family dynamics and the courage it took to choose authenticity over performance. Evelyn arrived last at 6:45, and I could see the nervousness in the way she stood at the door, uncertain of her welcome, even after a year of tentative rebuilding. She was living in the renovated Bennett house, now paying $2,800 in rent every month without fail. She'd been in therapy, consistently building a relationship with Patricia, running her own small PR business that focused on nonprofits rather than corporate image management. She handed me a wrapped package. I didn't know if gift-giving was appropriate. We haven't really established those kinds of traditions yet. I unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a framed photograph I'd never seen before, 8-year-old me at the beach with Grandma Rose, both of us laughing, my face bright with genuine happiness. I found it in a box of old photos at the house, Evelyn said. You looked so happy. I wanted you to remember that you were once just a kid who deserved better than what they gave you. My eyes filled with tears. Thank you. This means more than you know. Dinner was everything the previous year's party had been, and more. Real conversations, genuine laughter, people who actually listened to each other instead of waiting for their turn to talk. When it came time for toasts, Mrs. Chen stood first. This is my 3rd Christmas with Claire, she said, raising her glass. Every year gets better. Every year I'm more grateful to be included in this beautiful chosen family. Maya went next. To the woman who taught all of us that family is a choice we make every day, that we don't owe our loyalty to people who've hurt us just because we share DNA. Claire, you showed us what courage looks like. Patricia spoke next, her voice emotional. Thank you, Claire, for helping me find my daughter again after 39 years, for giving us both the chance to build something honest and real. Grandma Rose's toast was simple and perfect. To my granddaughter, who's always been brave enough to walk away from what hurt her and strong enough to build something better in its place. Then Evelyn stood, and the room went quiet. I know I'm new to this whole chosen family thing. I'm still learning what it means to show up for people without expecting something in return. Her voice shook slightly. A year ago, I was cruel, entitled. I parroted everything they taught me without questioning whether any of it was true or kind. Claire, you didn't have to give me a second chance. The house, the boundaries, the patience you've shown while I figure out who I am without them, thank you. You did the work, I said. I just held the door open. After dinner, Evelyn and I stood on the balcony while guests mingled inside. The ocean was dark except for moonlight catching the wave crests. Mom and Dad ask about you, Evelyn said quietly. What do you tell them? That you're happy. That seems to confuse them more than anything else. I laughed. Yeah, I bet it does. Do you think you'll ever talk to them again? I thought about it honestly. I don't know. Maybe someday. But I don't need to forgive them to move on with my life. I'm not waiting for their apology to be happy. I'm already happy. 40 minutes north, in a small 2-bedroom condo, Richard and Diane were having a very different Christmas. No decorations adorned their space. No guests filled their home. They heated frozen dinners in a microwave and ate in silence at a small table. She'll come around eventually, Diane said, as she'd said countless times over the past year. She always does. Richard looked at an old photograph on the wall. Young Claire at her spelling bee, holding her 3rd-place ribbon, smiling at someone outside the frame. I don't think so. Not this time. She's our daughter. She'll forgive us eventually. She already has, Richard said quietly. That's why she's not here. Back at my villa, guests started leaving around 10 o'clock. Each person hugged me goodbye with genuine warmth, promising to see me soon for coffee or lunch, or one of the regular gatherings that had become part of my new normal. Grandma Rose stayed overnight in the guest room, as she often did. Before bed, I stood alone on my balcony one last time, looking out at the ocean I'd come to think of as mine. A year ago, I'd thought exposing my family's dysfunction would make me feel free. I'd thought the viral post, the public humiliation, the collapse of their carefully constructed image would be what finally released me from their grip. But real freedom hadn't come from their humiliation. It had come from this, a quiet house full of people who chose to be here. It had come from knowing I didn't need their approval to be whole, their acknowledgement to have value, their love to be worthy of love. The Christmas party last year had gotten 15,000 views. Tonight had gotten 0, and tonight was perfect. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I looked at the screen. "This is Mom. I hope you had a nice Christmas." I read it once, then put my phone face down on the balcony railing. For a moment, I considered responding. Then I thought about everything that had led to this moment, 38 years of trying to be enough, a year of learning I already was, and the peace I'd found in no longer needing them to see it. I picked up my phone, turned it off, and went inside to bed. This time their whispers no longer owned me, because I'd finally learned to listen to my own voice instead. So that's my story. The Christmas I stopped being invisible. The year I chose myself over obligation. The moment I realized that real family isn't about blood or duty, it's about showing up, seeing each other, and choosing love without conditions. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening. Thank you for witnessing my journey from being the family ATM to becoming someone who knows her worth. I hope my story resonated with you, maybe reminded you of your own struggles, or gave you permission to set boundaries you've been too afraid to establish. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever been in a similar situation? Have you funded celebrations you weren't truly welcome at? Have you been the scapegoat in your family while someone else played the golden child? Drop a comment below and share your story. You're not alone in this, and sometimes just saying it out loud to people who understand can be the first step toward freedom. If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. I share real stories about real people navigating complicated family dynamics, setting boundaries, and choosing themselves without guilt. Every week I bring you stories of courage, transformation, and the messy, beautiful work of building the life you deserve. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, someone who's been made to feel invisible in their own family, share this video with them. Sometimes we need permission to believe we deserve better. Sometimes we need proof that walking away doesn't make us the villain. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being part of my chosen family. I'll see you in the next story.